This boy was always the target of bullying at school, which made him incredibly miserable, and when he got home, his own mother would look at him with hateful eyes, taking out her anger on him for being abandoned by his father. He thought his life couldn't possibly get any worse, but he was wrong. That day, the doctor announced that he had an incurable disease, and his condition grew progressively worse. It made it difficult for him to even stand up, and even going to the bathroom by himself was an ordeal, until one day he couldn't do it on his own anymore, leaving a puddle of urine on the floor. Trembling, he looked up at his mother, whose eyes were cold and without a trace of pity, and he cried and begged, "I'm sorry, I'll clean it up myself, so please don't abandon me." His mother just kept looking at him with those same cold eyes, and from that day on, he never saw her again. His illness worsened, and he passed away in a cold, lonely room, making a silent wish just before he died. "If I have a next life, I want to be loved by everyone," and a deity heard that plea. Taking pity on the poor child, she reincarnated him into a new world for his next life. He was born into a prestigious family. As the most beloved youngest son, he thought his life would be filled with joy and happiness, but that dream shattered in an instant. When he turned 8 years old, his body suddenly became stiff and immobile. Leaving him bedridden, it was another incurable disease with an unknown cause, and he had to endure treatment for 5 long years. But it was completely pointless. Just then, memories of his past life came flooding back. The one who had helped him was the creator of Horizon Thun Failen, and suddenly he felt his body become much lighter. It was as if the incurable disease had completely disappeared, and the servant who saw the young master moving was absolutely shocked. Then tears of joy streamed down his face, and overjoyed beyond words, he decided to live a life without regrets, as the youngest son of the Florivia family. But something felt a little off. He had only recovered for a day or two, and his uncle was already dragging him out to be a human punching bag for sword practice, but thanks to that, his body recovered even more quickly. His swordsmanship became even more formidable. His uncle Idia was a doctor who returned from the capital to care for him after hearing of his recovery, and at that moment a family elder and his 2 sons approached to ridicule them. "A sickly brat and a runaway are practicing swords here. How can they still call themselves members of the Florivia family? What a pathetic pair," he said, turning to insult Idia. "I can't believe you're holding a sword again." He brought up the past when his grandfather beat Uncle Idia. Just because his swordsmanship wasn't as strong as his brother's, he was considered the family's disgrace and had to run away to the capital. Hearing his Uncle Idia being insulted, he wondered why he had to listen to such taunts in this life as well. "I had enough of this in my last life." He immediately landed a punch straight on the elder's grandson's face, leaving everyone utterly shocked. While he was still busy rearranging that guy's face, he yelled loudly, "Uncle Idia isn't the family's disgrace, you are!" Suddenly, a flash of light tore through the air toward him, but it was blocked by Uncle Idia. It turned out that old elder was absolutely furious. Livid that his grandson had been punched, the old man's eyes looked demonic as he roared, "You think you can get away with hitting my grandson?" But the boy wasn't the least bit scared, and he yelled back even louder. "He's the one who started insulting us first. Are you deaf, old man? He deserved to be hit for running his mouth like that. You reap what you sow." The old man was seething, but couldn't do a thing before leaving. He didn't forget to make a threat. "Your older brother, the family's vice-head, will have to take responsibility for this matter." Hearing his older brother mentioned, the boy broke out in a cold sweat because he was an incredibly terrifying person. His big brother Hindu, as the family heir, holds all the power and is different from his terrifying appearance. He really dotes on his younger brother. The result was he literally told that man to shut his mouth, that anyone who dared to touch his precious little brother would have to face the entire clan. Florivia is truly the kind of older brother everyone envies. While my own brother just cost the family $2 billion, but for the crime of assaulting a clan member, the young master was still punished with being grounded for 1 month. Unable to go out, Eugene was internally baffled. He had only accidentally punched his cousin a mere 10 times, so why was the punishment so severe? Hearing this, the servant was also speechless with his young master. This kid had just smashed the great elder's grandson's face in, and only getting grounded was already extremely lucky. With a big brother backing him up to that extent, what more could he want? Well, since he was free anyway, Eugene decided to self-study more about magic. But the library had too many miscellaneous books of all genres. He did not know where to start. At this rate, trying to become a master through self-study was a complete long shot. He wanted to ask his big brother to find him a teacher, but he did not dare because he was still grounded. Right at that moment, his uncle brought a professor from the Magic Academy. Her name was Eugene, also told the two of them the truth about how he had been using his time grounded to study magic. However, he had only learned basic spells from a textbook series. Hearing this, Eastston immediately turned pale. This kid created a magic thread just by self-studying. It was on par with using a cheat code that is like a newborn baby. Knowing how to read and write the moment it is born, so unreal, Eastston realized Eugene was a genius who possessed an absolute sense that went beyond the scope of the five senses, an extremely rare gift. Only found in the greatest mages in history, Eastston immediately tried to entice the boy to enroll in the magic academy where she worked. Eugene just needed to agree. She would take care of everything else from A to Z after that. Eugene went to ask his older brother for permission to go to the academy. His brother agreed, but with one condition: within 1 month, Eugene had to prove he had enough ability. To become an official mage, if he failed from now on, Eugene would have to obey the family's arrangements in ancient times when this land was nothing but chaos. The first sorcerer, Lord Failen, descended to us. Lord Failen saved this polluted world and used magic to drive the monsters far away from this land. Thanks to that, those monsters disappeared, leaving behind a desolate and lonely land. She shed tears looking at the empty land. Lord Failen suddenly felt a wave of loneliness. Therefore, Lord Failen took the stars from the sky to create 12 disciples, and together they filled the land with life, and that is why the world is so peaceful today and has a prosperous life. Professor Eastston affirmed it was all thanks to Lord Failen and her 12 disciples. Finishing her story, she suddenly saw Eugene nodding off and became suspicious. "Is this story too boring?" he quickly replied. "No, ma'am." Eastston smiled gently, showing her understanding. "You do not have to hide it. It is normal to find this story boring after hearing it so many times, and you are just a child, aren't you?" Suddenly, she asked another question that caught him off guard. "Eugene, what do you think after hearing Lord Failen's story?" Putting on a pensive look, he commented that she was a bit sentimental. "It seems she cries easily." Eastston was very happy that her student's words matched her own thoughts. That is right. That is one of Lord Failen's most charming points. It feels like she is a very emotional and approachable creator, does it not? Speaking of which, she added, that is a wonderful perspective. But why do you not try thinking like a mage for a moment? Why do you think we call her the supreme being who created life on Horizon by the title of sorcerer instead of God? Faced with this question, Eugene was truly bewildered now that he thought about it. Why was that just then Eastston's two hands were cupped together, holding a sparkling light in between? The miracle of beings like God, the miracle of creation and of life itself, just as magic creates countless threads, those threads of magic are just like the strings of a musical instrument. Depending on how you pluck them, they can create different phenomena, just as strings can create different sounds. Depending on their vibration, they can become water and fire, become wind and light, become life, and even become the world. That ray of light gradually transformed into a crystal ball. Eastston stated this is basic magic for a new mage. And Lord Failen's creation magic works on the same principle within the scope of these strings. Thus, the strings can truly be considered the alpha and omega of magic. What Eugene had just heard and witnessed was enough to leave him in awe as Eastston continuously transformed the magic in her hand to illustrate. That's why a mage's ability depends entirely on the strings, how many strings they can control and how well they can use them. Those are the two aspects that determine a mage's ability. Eugene, your talent was confirmed on that day. You're like a performer. The ability to handle strings delicately is already within you. The only thing left is to see how many strings you can use. Eugene also tried stretching his two hands, looking a bit sad. I only have one string. Eastston immediately comforted him. Of course, everyone starts with one string. By now, she had transformed the magic in her hand into a crystal. Starting with one string, the goal is to reach the minimum number required to truly affect the waves out there. 4 strings is the gateway to true magic. But currently, no one can reach 4 strings. Everyone's number of strings is fixed at birth. Hearing this, he became very sad, at a loss for words. At this moment, a very strange device appeared in her hand. That's right. So today we will use this measuring device to assess Eugene's potential. He immediately brightened up, yes. Suddenly he looked up with his innocent face and asked, "But miss, how many strings should a person have? What if I have too few?" Eastston reassured him. "After all, we're talking about the Falivia bloodline, so don't worry too much. Although the number of strings is important, it's not everything." Eugene asked skeptically, "Really?" Eastston then gave a comparison. There are many such cases. "When having many strings is just pie in the sky." Eugene obediently replied, "I understand." Eastston continued, "Nowadays, young mages are too obsessed with the number of strings." He looked bewildered, huh? At this, she expressed her opinion. In my eyes, it's foolish and pathetic when people who can't even perform intermediate magic properly look down on the efforts of those with fewer strings acting like privileged elites just because they were born with more. Eugene affirmed, I understand what you're saying. At this, Eastston patted his shoulder and said, I got a bit heated. Anyway, it doesn't matter what number appears. What's important is how you use it. Even if it's innate, it still takes effort to develop it, so don't worry too much about the number of strings. Yes. He then used the measuring device to check his number of strings. He didn't forget to reply, yes. Eastston sat beside him and instructed, Now close your eyes. Eugene obediently complied. Yes, her voice still echoing in his ears. And focus on that magical picture as you feel it and create your strings. Eugene focused, listening and following her instructions, his eyes shut tight as he perceived his own concept of magic. Then images of the past appeared in his mind. Crying like a child, the power that helped him escape the past and the pain of his current life. From the pain that was like a curse, a voice echoed in Eugene's ears. If that's the case, then you should be the same. You should disappear just like your father, please. As he held his small hand in front of him to examine it, he only saw blur the image of him in a new form. He still didn't understand what had happened in that moment. Eugene saw himself as if Lord Failen was holding his hand flying into the air. In the present, the device in his hand began to glow. Eugene realized to himself magic is liberation. Eastston looked at her student with expectant eyes. But in the next second, the truth before her made her break out in a cold sweat. A look of horror also appeared on Eugene's face. The display only showed 1 second. He was so stunned he couldn't believe his eyes, screaming. Only 1 second, Eastston saw her student's despair and didn't know how to comfort him. Although I said the number of seconds wasn't everything, 1 second is not enough to become a mage. Eugene couldn't accept it. How could this be? Veins bulged on his face. The teacher thought, how could God be so cruel to such a golden talent? 1 second was beyond imagination. Looking at Eugene's hopeful face, Eastston said, I'm sorry, Eugene. 1 second, it basically means you can't become a mage. The sky suddenly began to pour rain. She said with regret, I never wanted this to happen. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have given you this false hope. Tears streamed down Eugene's face as he reached out to catch the raindrops. He sobbed in grief, crying out, what about a mage like Lord Failen? Can I do it with just 1 second? He wiped the tears from his face, mumbling, I'm sorry, Lord Failen. Even though you chose me, I have nothing. Just then, a red umbrella suddenly appeared over his head. Startled, he looked up at the man. He didn't seem to notice him much, just gazing into the distance and remarking, a sudden rain. Quite unexpected, isn't it? Eugene called out softly. Hello, Ida. Ida Olivia smiled brightly and said, It's still good to run into you like this. You just came from your magic class, didn't you? Was today's lesson fun? It was only then that he noticed the tears on the boy's face and let out a surprised, oh. Like a child who had just been bullied, Eugene tearfully threw himself into the man's arms and sobbed. Ida took him inside the house. A little later, holding a steaming hot cup, Eugene sat silently on the bed wrapped in a blanket. Ida's voice rang steadily in his ears. It's not like it's nothing. You can't hide anything with that face of yours. By now, Ida had changed his clothes. He said, You don't have to pretend to be a grown-up in front of me. Feel free to share your worries. Faced with such gentleness, Eugene stopped trying to be strong. Tears streamed down his face as he asked, What should I do? Ida, I can't become a mage. Ida frowned momentarily, unsure of how to reply. A moment later, his expression brightened. I'm not exactly sure why you're saying that. But isn't it too soon to decide that you still have 1 month, you know? The boy said agitatedly through his tears. But it's only 1 month. 1 month isn't enough to become a mage with just 1 second, Ida said gently. It would take a miracle, of course. But haven't you already experienced a miracle before? I may not know much about magic or understand how difficult it is, but as a doctor I know very well how many miracles can happen. Ida reminisced about when you stood up again. He remembered the day Eugene learned to walk on crutches, waving and calling out to him, affirming half the reason I became a doctor was to see you as healthy as you are today. By now, Eugene had stopped crying. He took a sip from his cup, seeming much calmer. Suddenly, Eugene said, Don't make me feel embarrassed. And don't make me emotional. Of course, I'm hoping for a second miracle. It's just a wish, though. Eugene immediately retorted, That's ridiculous, especially in just 1 month. But surprisingly, Ida held up one finger in front of him, confirming, Just 1 month, right? It may be too short to achieve something. Before Eugene's expectant gaze, Idia remarked, "But this is the perfect time for you to try your hardest, isn't it? Why not pause your despair for now, until 1 month has passed?" Eugene pursed his lips, full of determination. "You're right." At that, his small face brightened. "Thank you. Because of you, I know what I have to do now." Idia smiled gently and replied, "It's nothing." He took another sip of water, thinking to himself, even without my advice, he would have cried for a bit and then picked himself back up. That's just the kind of person you are. By now, the sky had turned to late night. From inside a house, someone's panicked voice echoed, "Ah." Professor Eastston adjusted her glasses and questioned if there was a way for someone with 1 second to become a mage. Eugene looked thrilled. "It's not impossible, is it really?" Professor Eastston shared sincerely, "But that's only in theory. As a teacher, it's very hard to tell my student that it's possible." Eugene showed his determination. "All right. No matter how hard it is, please teach me." His small hand clenched into a fist as he continued, "After all, I have 1 month. Even if I'm discouraged by having just one string, I want to try without any regrets." At this moment, Easton had to bow her head with a wry smile. "Oh dear, I've really failed as a teacher. My student hasn't even given up, but I surrendered so early." "All right, let's give it a try. Why not?" "If there's no precedent, we'll create one." He happily nodded yes. Then she held up 4 fingers and reminded him, "I mentioned to you before that you need 4 seconds to use magic." Eugene's eyes suddenly sparkled. "But that doesn't mean—" "You can't use magic with fewer seconds." He chimed in, "That's right." "Yes." She held up 1 finger and explained the way to use magic with just 1 second and nothing more. Eugene looked at her expectantly. "Yes." Easton again held out a hand with 4 fingers and said vaguely, "You need to use that single 1 second as if it were 4 seconds. You'll have to figure out the method yourself." Eugene began to feel confused as the illusion of her created 3 more copies. In the following days, he diligently practiced his 1-second magic. Sometimes he felt as if he was close to creating 3 seconds of magic. But then he would once again have to grit his teeth in frustration and tell himself, "I failed again. Why is it so noisy? The string snaps so fast if I rush it. It doesn't feel like it's going to work." Suddenly, very confusing images started appearing in Eugene's head. He was also stunned. Could it be understood as using one as if it were 4? Isn't that a bit literal, like trying to stuff an elephant into a refrigerator? Why are these strange thoughts appearing at the same time as the memory of Professor Easton's enthusiastic face appearing in his mind? He reminded himself to stop thinking nonsense and just focus. "It's hard, but I have to succeed. Because the teacher said this is the only way." But suddenly a sarcastic voice rang out, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Eugene's face soured. Them again, the twin brothers Rob and Rock were standing behind him, taunting him. "Can't you be quiet?" "How can someone with only 1 second make so much noise? How can you even practice magic with just 1 second, huh?" Eugene rested his chin on his hand and said flatly, "Rock, leave me alone." Immediately after, he stood up, grabbed Rock's collar, and asked seriously, "Do you want to get beaten up like last time?" He scowled and shot back what Rob got so angry he gritted his teeth. "You pathetic worm, what are you talking about? If that had been a proper fight, you would have been dead that day." Eugene is using a provocative stance to challenge if you feel that way. "Why don't we try a real match? Rob is ready to accept." "I'm really here for that, you monster." "Ty, you're suddenly showing fear. What are you questioning?" "Really, no, I mean a small real battle." Rob replied nonchalantly, "Of course, I'm not suggesting a brutal match." His words contradicted his thoughts as Rob's mind was filled with fierce monsters. Instead of saying that, "Let's compete honorably as members of the Folivia clan, the protectors of the Western Horizon." When my brother said these words, the slope nearby listened without missing a word. Thin lips curled into a sly smile, bravely facing the abyss at the front line. Rob clenched his fists provocatively, how by hunting the dark monsters. The words of the abyss sigh made Eugene's eyes widen and his face pale in shock. "What are you crazy hunting dark monsters? What are you thinking?" He advised the two not to think about it anymore. "I will talk to our brother again," but Rob continued to provoke Eugene with words like, "What are you feeling scared?" "Scared." He tried to explain that the issue here is not fear. "You know, you shouldn't do that." He put on an obvious face and replied, "Isn't that what we will do when we grow up?" "Why can't we?" Crossing his arms in front of his chest, he spoke, "Let's leave this coward behind. We will go without him." But Eugene still tried to explain, "We've never acted like adults. And clearly hunting demons is not a child's game. You can't go." But Rob suddenly asserted, "No, you're misunderstanding. It's not a game. It's actually a plea for help from another village." At this point, he also calmed down somewhat and questioned then who requested it. Suddenly, a ragged boy appeared lurking in a corner of a tree, calling this kid come out and explain. Jin quickly replied yes. Eugene's pupils widened in disbelief. A child immediately came out in front of everyone, recounting with tears. The adults have all been taken by demons, and I don't know what to do alone. Jin was so angry that he shouted at Rock if it's a serious matter and the victims are involved. Then you should say that. At this point, he sat down next to Jin, asking, "Are you okay? Where is your village? Don't mind these fools and tell me, just consider us your two brothers." Rob and Rock looked at each other, doubting what's wrong with our lives. At this moment, they could still hear Eugene's calming voice, reassuring the boy. "Don't worry, I'll talk to the adults and call the soldiers." Suddenly, the child in front of them touched his two fingers together, saying, "I'm not a boy." But in an instant, Eugene froze. "Sorry, I mistook you for a boy, got a chance to scold, stupid." Rob opened his mouth again, requesting this. "I don't care about other things, but don't talk to the adults, okay? Otherwise, the bets and everything will be gone." Eugene was unhappy, nearly every word. "Rob, you know everyone has been captured, and you still—" He stood up and shouted, still caring about hunting a stupid demon. But before he finished speaking, he explained that this child came from the village that burned the forest. Eugene incredulously asked again what immediately Eugene's face was sweating tight and burning the forest. Rob's deep, resonant voice still echoed in his ear. "You can probably guess what would happen if we reported a village for burning down the forest to the adults. You already know the outcome. The village would be destroyed and its people would be exiled or sentenced to forced labor." When Rob said these words, it seemed Jin didn't understand, as many question marks popped into her head. Finally, she heard Rob conclude with one sentence, "I'm not sure that's what this kid wants." Now, Rob put on a wicked expression. "Of course, I'm indifferent to both choices. I have nothing to lose, although it would be a shame if I couldn't hunt those dark monsters. But catching a group of villagers burning the forest isn't a bad achievement. Either scene change to a desolate village, leaf walls, crooked pillars, trees that couldn't even be bothered to bloom." In an instant, a dark monster growled, its mouth wide open, looking incredibly terrifying. Eugene was so scared he screamed loudly that even Doc had to turn his head to look. But right after that, who knows where the two of them found their confidence, firmly gripping their two swords, their determined eyes fixed on the monster. The next second, he lunged towards it, while taunting it, "Hey, if you're going to attack, then come at me." But the beast seemed to ignore Eugene's words and turned to flee, making him roar, "Stop, you monster!" as the dark monster dashed away, running straight into the deep forest. Eugene kept chasing it, completely unaware that he was being stared at by countless dark eyes. He continued to chase the monster ahead with a single thought: "I want to end this quickly and go home." After who knows how long, the dark monster was still running, furiously letting out terrifying growls, while behind it, Eugene gave his all to the chase, repeatedly yelling for it to stop. Suddenly, he stopped, one hand holding a sword, the other controlling a magic orb. "If you keep running, I'll do it my way," and right after that, the dark monster was hit by the attack and let out a piteous scream. At that moment, Eugene's face darkened like a sorcerer's as he swung his sword high and slashed down on the beast in a flash. Leaving it so bewildered, it questioned its own existence, not even knowing how it died. One slash from Eugene's sword sent the monster's head flying from its neck. In an instant, it fell right behind him as he cheered happily, "Got it. Finally caught you using magic too." But before Eugene could finish, the twin brothers, Rob and Jock, were already there, sneering, "Magic, huh? It's just noise pollution. All that loud noise just to catch that one. And how far did you have to go to catch one? How long did it take you?" With his two arms crossed, Jock remarked, "Magic and all that is just making a big fuss. At least I caught one, that's what matters. How many have you caught that gives you the right to talk so much?" Rob replied disdainfully, "I guess we'll see when we get back." Returning to that village, everything had grown quiet, and what appeared before his eyes left Eugene utterly astonished. "And what the heck?" Rob pointed at the pile of dark monsters and asked, "So what do you think? Even at a glance, it looks like we won the bet, huh?" Eugene's face darkened. Damn it, he had to admit to himself that it was infuriating, but they were truly impressive. Recalling the spectacle of taking down a single dark monster, he silently concluded that the number they caught was secondary, unlike him, who relied only on brute force. He looked again at the dark monsters before him. He concluded that they had precisely targeted the monster's weak points. Eugene's father had said that was a testament to the ultimate skill of Folivia, which was famous for its precise attacks. And even hitting their vital points at this moment, the brothers Jock and Rob began to taunt him again. "However, you still did better than I thought. I figured you wouldn't catch a single one." Black lines appeared on his face as he thought to himself, how annoying, but I never expected them to be this strong. At that moment, Jin looked up at Eugene with an admiring gaze, praising catching even one is already amazing. Even grown-ups couldn't have handled that wolf pack like you did. Eugene scratches his head shyly. Thank you. Then the little girl rubs her two hands together, saying, but you have helped me so much. I don't know how I can ever repay you, Rob scoffs. Repay us for what you're from that village that's burning down the forest. You probably don't even have anything worth more than my socks, do you? Vok chimes in. Don't give us anything. We'd just throw it away anyway. The little girl, now looking sad, says quietly, I'm sorry. Unable to stand their condescending attitude, Eugene snaps. Hey, watch your mouths. It's the thought that counts. Rob speaks up. That's enough. Save those words for the village chief. Do you know where the villagers were taken? She nervously taps her fingertips together and answers. When I woke up, everyone was gone. I really don't know, Rob clarifies. Gone. You mean they were taken by the monsters? The little girl lowers her head, speculating. People don't just disappear like that, so everyone just thinks it was the monsters doing. Veins bulge on Rob's angry face. What, you're just a clueless kid? Then Rob's expression turns thoughtful as he concludes. Which means, you don't even know if it was those monsters or not. And lucky for us, the only ones left are an old man and a useless brat. Clearly, there's nothing certain here. Rob sighs. I guess we have no other choice. Let's see what we can find before heading back. Standing aside and observing, Eugene silently notes. So these twins are pretty responsible after all. Suddenly, someone calls out to him. Hey, weakling. Annoyed Eugene still responds. What? He thinks to himself. They may be rude and annoying, but it seems they're not so bad after all. Vok starts pointing and giving orders. We'll search the area and look for everyone. You deal with the corpses and look after this kid. Surprised and displeased, Eugene retorts. Huh? Why let me help too? Rob once again adopts a superior tone and answers. Roles are assigned based on ability. Do you have any objection to that? Eugene grits his teeth, trying to suppress his anger. So rude. Not long after the pile of dark monster corpses is incinerated by flames inside a dilapidated house. The little girl's desperate cry rings out. Grandpa, Grandpa, can you hear me? Eugene, who is also there, tries to explain. Trespassing in Horizon is one thing, but the monsters were likely provoked by the damage to the land. That's why slash and burn is forbidden in Horizon. As he says this, the fanatic's expression twists with displeasure, but Eugene doesn't see it. He continues trying to persuade him. I won't tell the grown-ups that you were burning the land, so please. Sir, promise me you won't do it again, okay? The old man isn't moved by his leniency. Instead, he mutters, annoying brat. Not quite hearing him, Eugene asks, what was that? The fanatic immediately changes his demeanor, smiling brightly as he speaks. I'm so grateful to the young nobles for helping us like this. How fortunate. Startled by the old man's sudden change in attitude, he stammers. No, that's not right. What did you just say? The fanatic again pretends not to hear. Speak up, my hearing isn't what it used to be. Eugene presses his lips together, knowing the old man is faking it, but says anyway. All right. I won't bring up any more sensitive topics, but at least explain the current situation to me. I heard the villagers have disappeared because the monsters invaded. Looking outside the village still seems very peaceful, he asserts. But there are no signs that the village was attacked. Because the creatures around the village are just ordinary demon wolves. At this point, Eugene became thoughtful. If a pack of wolves had dragged them away, they would have left tracks. As he spoke, the old man secretly shot him an irritated look, but in front of Eugene, he feigned ignorance, insisting, I don't know. I don't know anything at all when you get old. You might even forget what happened yesterday or today. Eugene lost his patience and, wanting to stay, no longer turned to leave. Before leaving, he left one last remark. All right, then. If you don't know anything, I guess I'll have to find the clues myself. Jin quickly ran after him, offering, I'll go with you, young lord. He was a bit surprised, then looked at the little girl and urged her to get some rest. You've been walking for a long time, Jin. You must be tired. Just then, the old man sitting on the bed spoke up coldly. That's right, why bother such a noble person? At that moment, the old man's brows furrowed and a frightening sound came from his throat as he demanded, Come here! Stay with this old man. Then the old man put on a repentant look and admitted his fault. Yes, it's my fault, young lord, and this child is still naive. Eugene looked at him. There's no need to scold her. He explained awkwardly, I was just worried the little one would get tired. At that moment, he wondered to himself, what's going on? His mood seems to have changed. The old man gave a hollow laugh and asserted, How kind. This poor child must be tired from all that wandering. At that moment, Eugene thought to himself, "There's something wrong with this old man." He then took the initiative and offered, "I will wash and put the boy to bed in my bed. You go on with your mission, young noble." What the old man said left Eugene feeling confused. Just then, Jin looked scared. "I don't want to. Why would I have to bathe with an old man?" The man stared at the little girl and let out an "ah." Then he softened his voice to reassure her. "What's the matter? A boy shouldn't be shy, right?" The little girl's eyes widened as she asked back. What Eugene was also surprised that the village chief didn't know Jin was a girl. He remembered the first time he met her. "I'm not a boy." Back then, he had awkwardly admitted, "I'm sorry I mistook you for a boy." Now the little girl quickly hid behind Eugene and retorted, "I'm not a boy, have you forgotten?" Before she could finish, he cut her off. "I'll take Jin with me," he added. "On second thought, it would be better to have someone guide me." The old man didn't object, simply acknowledging, "That's right. So take the boy with you." And suddenly he narrowed his eyes, his voice taking on a frightening tone. "But young lord." His footsteps faltered. He looked back at the old man with an unspoken question. "You might be surprised having lived such a sheltered life. But this is our way of life. It wouldn't be strange if we disappeared today or tomorrow." The old man suddenly started to advise. "So don't worry about lowly people like us. Just go back to your normal life." As they left the house, Eugene asked Jin, "How long has it been since the village chief started acting so strangely?" The little girl tried to remember but couldn't recall the specific time, guessing it was about 1 month ago. A fragment of memory rushed back to her as she confirmed. "He seems fine today, but before he was very abnormal. He didn't even recognize the villagers and would suddenly start drawing strange pictures. He would also make sounds that no one could understand." The little girl then recounted what she heard the villagers commenting about him. "That's why the adults said the village chief had gotten old." Everyone was talking about it like that. At this point, the little girl became agitated, asking a few disjointed questions about what and why now. He held Jin's hand tightly to calm her down, then asked where the village chief's drawings were. The little girl quickly replied that there was one nearby. Not long after, Eugene's face showed a terrified expression, sweat pouring down like rain. The two of them stood before a large boulder, staring intently at it as Eugene thought to himself, "I was hoping it wouldn't be this case." The little girl naively questioned why he asked that. She looked at him with her big round eyes, wondering, "Do you know something about this drawing?" His eyes narrowed slightly. Eugene only thought to himself, of course. The people of Falivia learn about this symbol before they learn to read and write. On the rock were drawings of small and large circles joined together. Eugene understood this symbol was the mark of our enemy. If they were involved, everything would become very complicated. Although he didn't say it out loud, Eugene was certain. The good news is that Falivia knows the enemy's behavior better than anyone. In the current silence, only Eugene's voice rang out. "Is there a large cave nearby?" The little girl immediately confirmed, "Yes, there is one, but the adults told us not to go." But he asked her to lead him there. By now, the two of them had entered the cave. Eugene quickly lit a torch to illuminate the path. His mind was still pursuing its own thoughts. A person suddenly going mad, mysterious disappearances. Stories like these usually share a common origin. Eugene led the little girl through the dark cave, holding a torch in one hand and a sword in the other while the little girl held on to him. As he walked, he was lost in thought about the worshippers of Ibis. The symbol of circles drawn in succession kept appearing in Eugene's mind, making him recall his professor's lecture about what happened right after the first mage Failen descended. Those worshippers of Ibis, the former rulers of Horizon. Failen was considered someone who came from the constellations. Like a usurper to wash away the original sin of being born as Failen's creations, they offer fellow humans created by Failen as sacrifices to Ibis. At that moment, in front of the two of them were the villagers tied up and lying next to each other, their eyes all lifeless. The little girl's eyes widened as far as they could go. Her face turned pale with horror, and she immediately clutched tightly onto his sleeve. 2 streams of tears flowed down Jin's face as she burst out crying and ran forward, shouting. Uncle Ramon's sister-in-law, Eugene, bit his lip, his expression not much different from Jin's. "This is truly shocking. I never imagined it would be this bad. This isn't something we kids can handle." As he was thinking this, a red glow of some kind appeared behind him, but the one thing he was sure of was what needed to be done now. "We need to tell the adults quickly." Suddenly an old voice echoed in the cave, sending shivers down their spines. The first prophet said that the nation would be built in the lowest of places. Take care of the lowly among us, for they are our salvation and the cities. Both of them turned their heads to see who was behind them, but the other person's voice continued on steadily, as if telling a story. A criminal asked the prophet what to do for salvation. The prophet replied, "Repent." How should we repent? Before the two children now was the grotesque face of the fanatic. The old man was still spewing strange, terrifying words. "O children of Failen." The two siblings were so scared they forgot to react. Watching his face constantly contort, his eyes glowing like fire, he uttered more malicious words. "Burn them, bury them in the well." As he said this, an overwhelming power erupted. It left the two children momentarily paralyzed. They were so scared they held each other's hands, tightly covering their eyes with their free hands. The old man's bizarre voice still echoed in their ears. "Feed them to the dogs," Jin called out in a trembling voice. "Sir." The fanatic no longer paid any attention to the little girl calling him, instead controlling a terrifying power in his hand while muttering an incantation. In the flames of abyss burned to death. Jin, still bewildered, asked a mage. He quickly grabbed Jin and fled from the approaching flames, his eyes narrowing. Eugene gritted his teeth and muttered, "Surprisingly, he's a mage, and a powerful one at that." Why would a powerful mage be in a place like this? Sweat poured down his face as Eugene looked at the unconscious villagers, constantly wondering what he should do. "I can't just abandon everyone and run away. Even if I fight, there's no chance of winning, and the others could get caught in the magic." An image of someone's heroic figure holding a sword flashed through his mind as he thought that if it were the experts of Falivia, they could cut through magic with a sword, but for someone like me who has been sick until just recently, I've only just recovered, I can't do it like my brother. Eugene grew dejected, blaming himself. Was I too overconfident? I should have notified the adults first. I should have hidden Jin before coming here. I thought it was too dangerous to leave her alone, but now... With his eyes shut tight and teeth clenched, he scolded himself. "No, you idiot, what's the point of regretting it now? I just need to think. Think about what to do. My head's a mess, I can't think straight." Suddenly, Jin's scream pulled Eugene back to reality. Before the two children were dark monsters baring their fangs with mouths agape as if ready to swallow the two siblings whole. It made both of them scream, "Monsters!" Eugene stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched, his sword hand trembling uncontrollably as he tried to hide the terror in his heart. Eugene swung his sword, slashing fiercely at the monsters. Gleaming sword strokes cut back and forth through the darkness as he continuously sliced the beasts in two. But while he was formulating a plan, the fanatic wheezed out Falivia, immediately after he used his dark magic to confront Eugene. Still growling Falivia, the fanatic opened his mouth wide, revealing sharp fangs, and declared, "I will offer you as a sacrifice to Abyss." At that, Eugene's eyes narrowed. He thought, if I must overcome magic to protect everyone, then I will. Suddenly, his eyes blazed with determination. Looking straight ahead, he swung his sword and declared, "That is the way of Falivia. The sword of Falivia can cut through the abyss. The techniques of Falivia have been developed over 10 generations for the sole purpose of facing the abyss." His eyes shone brightly as he realized, one of those techniques is the eyes of Falivia, an intuition born from the special training of our house, and practical combat experience manifested through one's vision. Some can predict an opponent's next move, while others can perceive their weaknesses, and some even claim they can see the very threads that make up magic, a technique that has truly touched the realm of magic itself throughout the ages. But such a technique isn't something I, who is bedridden, can use like the experts of the clan. For a moment, Eugene stood still, holding his sword. He stood proudly before the fanatic. But if I just limit it to one thing, magic and its threads... As he thought this, the old man launched an attack in his direction. He shouted, "Die!" Eugene immediately countered, slashing with his sword and declaring decisively, "I can even cut through them." The old man blurted out, "What my spell by an amateur like this?" Jin, who witnessed the event, couldn't help but look bewildered. Eugene was extremely confident, yes. He trusted himself at least when it came to the threads he could see them. He remembered all the times he had practiced magic alone, realizing he had practiced using the threads a great deal. He even ignored the people around him who advised him not to practice magic so relentlessly. The fanatic was now so furious he was grinding his two jaws together. His words hissed through his teeth. "My spell, he is just pointing and questioning without a plan for this. Stupid kid." Eugene stared wide-eyed at the old man, his lips pressed tightly in surprise. The man was dancing while completely surrounded by fire, which made Eugene stare blankly, wondering what on earth he was trying to do. With Felivia's eyes focused on every single thread, it wasn't difficult to see. Suddenly, the old man opened his mouth and shouted loudly, "Felivia, you deal with the magic user right after that." The fanatic controlled his magic to attack Eugene, challenging him at the same time. Try and slash through it again. He reacted quickly, pushing Jin behind him and urging, "Quick, get behind me." His sword swiftly cut through those fireballs. But the magical flames kept coming more and more numerous. He tried his best to cut them all down, but now his sword hand was trembling. This is not good, he realized. There were too many and they were too fast. Even though he tried to persevere, he realized he couldn't cut them all down like this. My stamina can't hold on any longer. At that moment, Eugene squinted, a tear welling in his eye as he silently cursed, "Damn it! Is this how it ends? After all that, I finally figured out how to cut all the threads only for it to end like this because I'm still too weak." The dark cave echoed with the fanatic's terrifying laughter. "Burn to ashes, you insolent brat of Felivia." Suddenly, he froze, a large question mark forming in his mind, as he noticed the light that was now rushing toward him. Eugene, sword in hand, thrust through the fanatic's curtain of magical fire. His eyes shone with determination as he thought, "That's right, it's just a simple problem." The fanatic recoiled. In the space between them, one thread of light remained as Eugene's shining sword thrust forward. Someone had once reasoned that if it's difficult to cut another's thread, a sword stroke sparked with electricity right in front of the fanatic. "Then I'll cut my own thread," Eugene thought decisively. The entire cave shook violently. The fanatic, burned by his own magical flames, screamed madly. Even now he was still wondering magic. Was that kid a mage all this time? Then he denied it to himself. "No, I've never seen this kid activate a spell." Only then did the old man realize, thinking to himself, could it be? The sword strokes the boy had made flashed through his mind. He pondered those strange swings of the sword into empty air. Were those movements to activate the magic, to cut his own thread, to activate magic? But he felt it was absurd. In theory, it wasn't impossible, but for such a technique to actually exist. Night fell over the village. In a small house, the fanatic was tied up tightly with a rope. Jin and Eugene were still busy caring for the villagers who had been struck by the magic. He had strained himself to bring them all back as quickly as possible, to the point he could hear his own heart pounding wildly in his chest. Seeing the rescued villagers now resting peacefully, Jin advised with a pained heart, "So, young noble, please don't push yourself so hard." He stated, "I'm fine." "That was the last one?" Jin, surprised, asked back, "What, the last one?" The little girl's eyes filled with tears again as she mumbled, "That's right, the others are already—" It was only then that he realized how sad she was. He lamented internally, "This is terrible, and we found the villagers. But so many people have died." He then urged himself, "And if we don't hurry, the rest will be in danger too." At that time, Eugene's small body, clenching his hands in front of his chest, he wondered when the twins would return so they could go home early. Jean looked at the boy and called out to attract the attention of the young nobleman when she saw Eugene looking back at her, pointing and asking if the village chief had done that to the villagers. Squatting in front of the girl, he explained not to blame the village chief for what she saw. That was not her village chief, but a worshipper of the abyss disguised as him. Jean innocently asked where our real village chief was, and Eugene didn't know how to explain. Telling himself in his head that the real village chief might have been he, hesitated and spoke up. "The real village chief, he—" Jin immediately understood the problem. Tears could no longer be held back and rolled down his cheeks. "I'm sorry for making it difficult for you. You don't have to answer. I can guess what might have happened to the village chief." At that moment, Eugene fell silent, not knowing how to comfort the girl. The resignation towards these people. The abyss became too familiar that even a child like her learned to accept it like an adult, linking it to his past image he thought it was like before receiving the salvation of the god Failen. "How had I been?" Placing a hand on the girl's shoulder as a gesture of comfort, Eugene was sure of one thing: he had been saved, but these people had not. The girl's eyes glimmered with hatred, questioning why the worshippers of the abyss would do such things. When Eugene answered, they believed that was the way to atone for their original sins, and it pleased the imagined abyss, picturing the villagers willingly offering themselves as sacrifices. He affirmed that was why they approached those in desperate need of help with sweet words of salvation, deceiving them as they looked towards the boy tied tightly behind him. Eugene warned, But you must not be deceived by their words, because in the end what they call salvation is just like this. The old man suddenly spoke. So what is your viewpoint? His eyes lit up as he began to proclaim his faith. The abyss could promise a path that required sacrifice. But does anyone among you truly care about life at the ends of this world? He looked at the old man in surprise. Is he awake? The old man continued, You say our words are empty, yet I will still strive to pursue that emptiness. What is the reason people are willing to sacrifice endlessly? Set aside your pride that only you are right and think carefully. Could it be because of the darkness of this world? Faced with the old man's reasonable words, he suddenly admitted that indeed the darkness of this world was very deep, but he countered, But that is something everyone should strive to correct. At this point, he angrily shouted, We do not pray to a cruel God that demands humans to be sacrifices. Do not deceive yourself that the world's flaws will be justified. I condemn the wicked actions of people. His words made the old man discontent. His brows furrowed tightly, his jaw clenched, while Eugene continued to murmur in the old man's ear from the very beginning. Sacrifice what? Do you really think we cannot see through your life and deceit? The old man growled, Shut up, you parasitic heretic, right now. A familiar voice rang out, making him very happy. Eugene. He responded, Rob, he limped towards me. If you are there, come help me. Eugene quickly ran out, continuously asking Rob, What is happening? What happened to the slope? He paused when he discovered Rob was also injured. Wait, Rob, your leg, too. He immediately replied, Don't worry, it's nothing important. I can still fight. Rob's face was drenched in sweat. More importantly, I'm sorry. Rob's words of remorse surprised him even more. I should have listened to him. Eugene stammered, asking what had happened to the two of them, but he froze before he could finish his question, because of the terrifying crimson thing appearing behind them. At this, Eugene's face turned pale, seeing the eyes of the abyss in the starry sky. The red and black sky before them was like a pair of demonic hands with long, sharp claws tearing the scene apart, a sight so terrifying no words could describe it. He unconsciously cried out, What is that? As Rob also turned to look behind them. Eugene's eyes were wide with horror. What the hell? From inside the house, the zealot's loud laughter rang out. The abyss has sent its representative for those who worship them. Elsewhere, the bare-chested Idia had dark tendrils wrapped around his body, the corners of his lips curling into a demonic smile. I wonder if I should go meet it. At that moment, the grotesque form of the abyss's ambassador appeared in the sky, making Eugene cry out in terror, Oh my God! He suddenly turned to Rob with a proposal. Can you evacuate the villagers while I hold them off? Rob looked completely stunned, unable to react. Eugene's steady voice continued to echo in his ears. I am sorry for having to ask you this, especially while you are also injured. Rob confidently replied, No, my injuries are nothing. But as he looked towards the villagers, his eyes widened. He hesitated. But the villagers! His gaze was fixed on the inhuman figure, the neither man nor demon form of the zealot. He asked, Is that a worshipper of the abyss? Just then the zealot let out a great scream, making Jin clamp his hands over his two ears. Abyss Rob, still trembling, wondered to himself, What the hell happened while we were gone? Looking at Eugene's small frame, Rob was bewildered, realizing he had faced that thing all by himself. Rob's lips tightened, tormented with guilt. While he was saving everyone, Suddenly, a gleaming sword blocked the way, startling Eugene. Rob called out, Hey! Rob stated firmly, You are brave. But your ignorance is a problem. Eugene called his name, not understanding what he meant. Rob gave a wicked smile and said it should have been the other way around. I should be the one to hold it off while you retreat. A worried Eugene questioned him. What are you talking about with your injuries? Unafraid, Rob stood facing the ambassador of the abyss. He looked back at Eugene and advised, Forget your useless sympathy and look at the reality before you, with this leg. How am I supposed to evacuate anyone from that damn thing? And Rob said confidently, Don't worry, I do not plan on dying, so evacuate everyone and inform the clan. I will manage somehow. Eugene's face twisted as he heard Rob declare, Your job here is done. Let me take it from here. Eugene called out to him again, Rob. But Rob was already walking forward unflinchingly, declaring, Let me take responsibility for dragging you into this. Eugene knew there was no way to stop him and could only call his name sorrowfully, Rob. At that moment, the zealot laughed loudly. All of you are finished! Looking up at the monster, the zealot proclaimed, Ambassador of the Abyss, the sacrifices for you have been gathered here. Take their lives to replace your shattered body. Rob glanced back unconsciously, repeating the key phrase from the zealot's last sentence as a question. Shattered body, Eugene's eyes widened as he wondered, does that mean? Mustering his courage, he looked at the monster and wondered, it is not at its full strength. Eugene gripped his sword, tightly filled with determination. We have to stop it now at any cost while it is still incomplete. But as he looked at the giant monster before him, he wondered, but this thing, is this something a human can even stand up against? Though his face was paler than a ghost, Eugene tried to steel himself. Don't be afraid, nothing can be solved by succumbing to fear. A voice suddenly rang out. He looked displeased, seeing Eugene step forward. What are you doing? Didn't you hear what I said? Eugene's lips curved into a resolute smile. This is a more practical decision. Together we can last longer. The other boy looked astonished and repeated what? Then Eugene explained his idea. Hearing your words, I realized that if we cause a big enough commotion, the adults will definitely notice. Falivia will surely come here. Rob, suppressing the fear in his heart, conceded that might be true. But facing that thing, will working together even make a difference? Eugene's two eyes lit up as he said with certainty, it'll be fine. Trust me. Rob froze as he looked into his eyes, which shone like headlights. His voice trembled Falivia's eyes. How do you... He gripped his sword with both hands tighter than anyone. Eugene knew the after effects of the last battle remained. I can't fight aggressively. I'll focus on dodging attacks. But while he was still thinking, the monster's gigantic fist swung towards his face. His eyes couldn't hide his terror as a trembling voice escaped him. What at that moment the space shook and debris flew everywhere. Eugene's pupils dilated to their limit as he looked up. The three boys, Eugene, Rob, and the other, were sent flying, suspended in midair for a moment before Eugene's body slammed into the ground. A loud thud echoed. He coughed up blood. Before his eyes closed, he stammered, "Impossible." Looking at the monster before him, he was lost in thought. With just one punch, the cultist looked up with hopeful eyes at the god he worshipped and laughed loudly. The abyss glanced at Eugene as the old man gloated mockingly. Look, you heretic, you mocked our faith as a lie, but behold how the abyss rewards our belief. At this, Eugene slowly closed his eyes, letting the tears fall. I'm sorry. Looking at Rob, he couldn't stop blaming himself. Rob, if I had listened to you, at least some people could have been saved. Then he thought of his older brother, wondering, if my brother were here instead of me, would the outcome have been different? Just then, a terrifying sound echoed. Something pure white like a tornado was unleashed from the monster's mouth. The cultist looked over and recognized that magic. Everything here will be wiped out. Looking at the blinding light before him, he pleaded, These are the offerings I have prepared for you. O abyss, please have mercy. Eugene gritted his teeth repeatedly, saying, I'm sorry. With one hand on the ground, he struggled to get up. A moment later, to the cultist's amazement, he was kneeling. His eyes sharpened. Because of my failure. The old man wondered in bewilderment how he could move as Eugene's laser-like gaze pierced straight through him. At the very least, he stood up straight, facing the monster's powerful ultrasonic wave. Eugene gripped his sword tightly, vowing, as long as my body can still move. For one more minute, or even just one more second, swinging his sword at the enemy with all his might, he declared, I will protect them. Once again, the surrounding space shook, debris flew everywhere, and the cultist fell to the ground. His eyes filled with disbelief at what he had just seen. No, he was too scared to speak. Impossible. The ambassador Abyss revealed its bizarre centipede-like form. The sword in Eugene's hand had partially broken. Now all he held was the hilt as he looked at the threads of magic lingering in the air. The cultist realized that amidst the fierce torrent of magical power, the boy had read the flow of the threads and cut right through them as he stared at the small but brave figure before him. The old man wondered if this could be true. Is there any magic that this newcomer cannot cut through? The thin lips of Eugene formed a proud curve as he held his sword. In the next moment he collapsed, exhausted, carrying a regret in his heart, wishing his sword was still intact. He looked up at the sky. The stars twinkled, and he murmured about the stars of the conquerors. The old man silently concluded that they were watching this kid. Why? Remembering the light he saw from the Ibis ambassador, he now assessed that looking back into the abyss was indeed hasty. Although the manifestation lacked a sacrificial offering and did not take the available offering, it tried to kill him immediately. Suddenly, the old man's pupils became frantic, constantly questioning who this kid was. Exactly who is he to attract the attention of such supernatural beings? The old man opened his mouth wide, full of sharp fangs, internally issuing a death sentence for him. No matter the reason before it grew any larger, it needed to be killed right now. But someone appeared just in time, swinging a sword and striking him from behind, saying, "Sorry, I didn't expect to be defeated like this." The old man turned his head to look, only able to utter one word. "You." He smirked, realizing that things were getting difficult now. Then he picked up Eugene in his arms, declaring to the Ibis ambassador, "He is my beloved grandson." The eyes of ID gleamed with determination. "I cannot leave the boy here." In the sky, the stars still shone brightly along with various other lights, gold, green, and blue. In a daze, he felt something very incomprehensible when he opened his eyes. He was astonished to see himself being carried by ID. He was seriously injured, but upon seeing Eugene open his eyes, he immediately asked, "Are you awake?" Eugene, bewildered, opened his mouth. Suddenly his eyes widened, realizing the situation. He hurriedly asked, "Uncle ID, why are you—" ID did not let him finish, simply explaining, "I came to pick you up because you were late. Fortunately, I didn't arrive too late." Eugene realized that the representative ABC was still here and quickly suggested, "No, Uncle, we have to run away from here." The giant monster of the abyss, he calmly reassured Eugene, "Don't worry." This surprised Eugene greatly. Suddenly he saw the monster collapse beside him. The steady voice of his uncle rang out, "It's all over now." His eyes still fixed on the monster, he stammered, "What?" Eugene looked up at the person. As if waiting for an explanation, he called out, "Uncle," but ID had no intention of talking to him here. He maintained his position, holding Eugene in his arms, suggesting, "Now let's go back and talk." The sky was very clear today. Eugene was walking down the street when he was attracted by the beautiful red roses. He approached to admire the flowers, exclaiming how beautiful they were, then stood upright, pointing at the vendor. Politely asking, "Excuse me, how much are these flowers?" The vendor recognized him and enthusiastically exclaimed, "Look who we have here. Hey, isn't this our youngest young master?" Not stopping there, she continued to tease, "Why does the young master need flowers? Don't tell me you have a girlfriend." Eugene waved his hands, explaining, "No, I'm just visiting a friend in the hospital." She looked shocked and exclaimed, "Oh my, are there two twin young masters?" She then pictured the three of them discussing their trip to that village. "Good heavens, I heard the story about how you young masters ventured into the forest a few days ago to defeat the beast. Oh my, you must have been injured during that time." She now enthusiastically asked, "Nothing serious, I hope." Eugene asked back in surprise, "Fortunately, that's not what happened." "But you already knew, ma'am." She then showed off her muscular arm, patting it with a bright smile and saying, "Of course I did. The story of the brave young masters saving the villagers from monsters. The whole town is buzzing with tales of your courage." Just then, his high-pitched scream echoed through the small street, "Really? How does everyone know the family council is still meeting?" she asked. The woman explained with a bright smile, "How could they not know? There's more than one soldier's family in the city, you know." At that moment, Eugene's face went pale as he pictured his brother's scary expression, while the flower seller's voice continued to ring in his ear, saying everyone knew the young masters had acted on their own. And in fact, the nations are anxiously awaiting their reaction. It was only then that he sobered up and admitted to himself that he'd almost forgotten about that. Suddenly, she handed him a bouquet of flowers, saying, "Here, consider this a gift for our little young masters." Then she added a reminder, "You're going to get scolded quite a bit later. So the right thing to do is, at least this old lady can look after our little heroes, right?" Despite what she said, he still waved his hand to refuse. "Thank you, ma'am, but I really shouldn't." She smiled brightly, trying her best to persuade him, "Please don't say no. You've shown such courage at your young age. Please accept this as a token of our support." Insisting he take the flowers, she leaned into his ear and whispered, "And don't refuse too much or this will never end." "You know," Eugene, stunned, asked for confirmation, "You mean it will never end, ma'am?" After leaving the flower stall, he was stopped by townspeople on the street, all wanting to give him baskets filled with loving gifts. Holding all of them, he was completely flustered. The villagers were so enthusiastic that their gift baskets nearly crushed Eugene, forcing him to cry out, "I'm sorry, I can't carry any more." At the hospital, the twin brothers stared wide-eyed and bewildered at the pile of stuff. Eugene struggled to put everything down, and one of the two brothers asked a question. "What is all this?" Panting, Eugene explained, "I went into the city to buy flowers to visit, and all of this was given to me as gifts by the townspeople. Yes, I'm very grateful, but it's a bit much." Bringing the bouquet to his two friends' bedside table, Eugene asked, "I'll just put the flowers here, okay?" Rob replied, expressionlessly, "Do whatever you want." When Jock looked at everything he brought, he had to say something, but look at how much they gave. "It seems the townspeople think this was our first battle." Bolivian warriors are usually given a warm welcome with flowers on their first expedition. His gaze lowered slightly as Rob said, "I've never seen so many gifts at once." Eugene had to agree, "Is that so? That makes sense now." Eugene expressed his regret, saying, "But I feel it's a pity that in the end I was the only one to receive all the welcome." Rob replied nonchalantly, "It's fine. It would only make you feel more guilty if you were honored without any real contribution." Suddenly, Rock spoke up with concern, "By the way, are you okay? How are you able to walk after being injured that badly?" Eugene looked bewildered, exclaiming, "Oh, right," as he held out his hand. There was a long scar on it, but for sure, besides a few scars, there was nothing serious. Suddenly, Eugene's face lit up with excitement as he suggested, "Perhaps it's because I've been resting for the past 5 years." Contrary to his smiling face, the twins' faces fell. Rob spoke up to remind him, "You know that's not funny, don't you?" Eugene, looking a bit confused, asked back, "Not funny?" His fingertips fidgeted together, and with eyes that looked like they were about to cry, he hesitated so. "I see you've recovered as well, so perhaps I should be leaving now." A faint smile crossed Rob's face. Before Eugene could leave, he suddenly spoke up. "Eugene, I'm sorry for how I treated you before." Eugene exclaimed in surprise me. Then Rob also looked very surprised at this. Rob continued seriously, "To be honest, I thought you were just a freeloader mooching off everyone from your sickbed." Rock, unable to listen any longer, cut in, "Hey." Just then, Eugene could still hear Rob confessing, "But I was wrong about you. That day you were more of a Folivian than anyone." This made him scratch his head in embarrassment, unable to accept the praise, no way. At this point, Eugene also commented sincerely, "You're pretty impressive yourself with your sense of responsibility. I thought you guys were just a couple of obnoxious brats coasting on your family's status." Rock, annoyed, retorted, "Just keep insulting us, you psycho." Then he added, "That's enough of this awkward conversation. Tell me what happened that day." Just thinking about the wicked appearance of Ambassador IBC made Rock curious. "How did you survive against that monster? I still can't understand it." "No," Eugene admitted, flustered, "no. Actually, it was nothing impressive. It seemed the monster hadn't fully recovered. It just collapsed on its own after some time. The image of Idia carrying him in her arms flashed through his mind as he asserted this. And right at that moment, my uncle came and handled the rest. That's how it all happened. We all agreed on that." At this point, Eugene confirmed, "That's what happened, you guys. Does this make you feel let down?" One of the two replied, "Even if it is a letdown, it's over now and we're still alive." The other added, "I guess that's right." At this point, not wanting to disturb their rest any longer, he suggested I should get going now, or else I'll get an earful for being late. Suddenly, Rob stopped him. "Wait." Then he suddenly hesitated. "It's nothing important, I just wanted to say." Seeing Eugene's expectant eyes, he struggled to say thanks for visiting. Eugene smiled brightly, thinking that's what friends are for. That day, the people of the domain joyfully praised the warriors who protected their lands. And in return, the brave warriors faced the abyss to live up to those expectations. Eugene looked at the courageous soldiers, realizing it's simple, but that's the ideal relationship. That's why the Folivia family is on the front lines fighting the abyss, and have kept the peace. At this, he thought of Idia again and had a quiet realization thinking about it this way. I can kind of understand why. The family is too harsh on you and me. If the honor of the Folivia family is tarnished, everything could collapse. Perhaps that's what they believe. I remember how I looked every time I faced a challenge. Always tense and panicked. I can't help but admit it. I even trembled in fear. But then I think about all I've accomplished," Eugene affirmed. "But I overcame it with the pride of being a Eugene. If not for the pride the Eugene name has given us, none of it would have been possible. Of course, that doesn't excuse the harassment, especially the way my uncle was treated. It was too cruel and unjust. The family's expectations once rested on my father, a promising talent. But after he was severely injured in the Northern War and could no longer hold a sword, the family's expectations shifted from my father to my uncle." Eugene remembered his uncle's timid figure as a child when their grandfather trained him with the sword. But my uncle preferred books over swords, and when it became clear that he didn't have my father's talent, he remembered the whippings his uncle endured being beaten and scolded. "You fool! Why can't you be like your brother? Even the younger children here can do better than you. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? To think my own son is someone like you, you're a disgrace to my life. No, a disgrace to the Folivia family. Idia lived through those dark days. Until he was an adult, led by my grandfather, the former head of the family, they began to despise, harass, and ignore my uncle. I thought about the time I was bedridden. I realized I also received the family's contempt for being bedridden. Back then, a servant took care of me. The Countess sent this for you, my lord. I was lucky. In my case, I still had my family. Thinking of Idia's small, thin frame, Eugene's heart ached, but my uncle had no one. His days must have been even more painful. Suddenly, his face brightened as he thought of the present. But my uncle never gave in even to such cruel torment. Remembering the times he spent with him, he was sure of one thing. My uncle never lost his kindness and gentle nature and chose to become a doctor to help people. But he still remembered the night he fought the representative from ABC, realizing the truth was that he had even overcome his weakness in swordsmanship, becoming a swordsman capable of facing the strongest in the family. Suddenly, his uncle noticed his gaze. Lowering his book slightly, Idia asked, "Why are you staring so hard? Is there something you want to say?" He smiled brightly and said, "Just thinking. I want to be someone just like you, uncle." He was a little surprised by the innocent remark. In his mind, he whispered Eugene. He thought of his own body covered in scars, thinking it would be a disaster if you ended up like me. Later, as he was treating his own wounds alone, a piece of gauze held in his mouth, Elias suddenly appeared, causing him to speak. "You really know how to make someone feel ashamed." He immediately replied, "Never mind that. What's your condition?" While treating a wound on his waist, Idia revealed, "Not good. I've lost a lot of blood and my muscles are torn. I expect to lose 20% of my mobility. For the damage to be only this much." "After facing the abyss, King is lucky," Elias said flatly, "lucky." Then he suddenly exploded. "You call that lucky? Do you have any idea how much effort we put into preparing for that?" Standing behind him, he continued his tirade, regardless of whether Idia was listening. "That thing was supposed to handle an entire war front to kill it just like this. How are we supposed to face that demon general now? Not to mention you've lost 20% of your power." The more he spoke, the more enraged he became. "Unbelievable. Why would you do that? Did you get caught up playing family with that kid named Eugene?" Turning to look at the guy, Idia's finger pressed against his talkative mouth, forcing Elias to stutter. "Lord Idia, your actions are going too far." With one hand, he grabbed the guy's head like a worthless ant and questioned if the children of House Falivia were wiped out right here. "Do you think things would still go according to plan?" Elias didn't dare to object, merely clutching his foolish head with one hand as he listened to the lecture, and yet you tremble over the absence of a single rotten corpse. "Do you think you can withstand the wrath of Falivia? From the very beginning, if you mages hadn't been so foolish as to resurrect the king on your own, would any of this have happened? What gives you the confidence to speak before me?" With tear-filled eyes, Elias bowed his head and begged, "Disciple of the great prophet, please accept my sincere apology for my rudeness. I know it is unlikely, but I wonder if you have forgotten our important objective." At this, Idia's anger subsided a little, and he let go of his hair as Elias bowed his head in admission. "It was my own foolish suspicion that led to such rudeness and disrespect. I will gratefully accept my punishment." Only then did he crack a satisfied smile, but the other man still tried to explain, "But it wasn't us who resurrected the Abyss King. According to the current situation, we barely completed the ritual on time, so an early resurrection was impossible." Idia lowered his head slightly as his grim voice echoed. "The actions of you mages are always like this." Kneeling on the ground, the man repented. "I have nothing to say." At this, he asserted, "However, the plan is not hindered. I expected nothing from you from the start." Idia's face grew menacing as he declared, the head of the Hindle clan of Falivia, "I will personally deliver death to him." Hearing this, a hint of glee appeared on the other man's face. "The fall of Falivia will proceed as planned on the night foretold by the Abyss. One day, under a clear blue sky, Falivia will drown in a sea of flames." Eugene continued to practice his 1-second magic. He closed his 2 eyes to feel it out when suddenly they lit up. In the air, Eugene drew a beautiful sword stroke, causing someone to exclaim, "Falivia-style 4-second cut." Wiping the sweat from his face, he stopped and asked, "What about that teacher? It's different from the method you taught, but I still managed to use magic." He then asked innocently, was it because it was a life-or-death moment? "Your teaching suddenly popped into my head, and I immediately improvised based on them." At this, his eyes sparkled as he asked, "So how was it? My magic isn't bad, is it?" With a horrified look, veins bulging on her forehead, Esteem answered honestly, "I don't even know what this is anymore. It's terrifying." Eugene looked baffled and asked in confusion, "So this really can't be called magic?" She was so flustered that she stuttered momentarily, at a loss for how to explain. "No, that's not what I meant. I was just surprised." In her mind, Esteem thought it's impressive that he thought to use magic by severing his own string, but this concept actually appeared during the Age of Myths. Ancient myths. She then recounted it's known as the sword magic Daisio, however it said that almost no one can use it in actual combat. That's because... At this, Eugene, with a sad look on his face, continued for her, as soon as the string is cut, I lose control and it becomes too difficult to use if things get even slightly more complicated. She comforted him, at least you were able to use it. Then she explained further Daisio is chaos because it is inherently uncontrollable. In other words, it's like shattering a clay pot to form what you want an extremely difficult way to cast magic. As she finished, an agitated Esteem grabbed his two shoulders and shook him nonstop. At the same time, she asked, how in the world did you manage to do that? With his two eyes wide, Eugene stuttered, teacher, I'm getting dizzy. A moment later, she calmed down and called out to Eugene, her expression turning pensive as she admitted it was her fault for getting too excited. I'll try to be a bit calmer. She paused for a moment, then remarked, it is truly wonderful and astonishing that you have succeeded in using Daisio, but reaching the level of a mage with it will be very difficult. Before his expectant gaze, Eastston began to explain it leans too much toward raw energy and is very difficult to control. It is not suitable for the complex and sophisticated requirements of modern magic. In fact, no one at the Magic Academy can teach Daisio. Sitting before Eastston, he retorted, is that so? I think I've found a good way. To this she acknowledged, of course. Daisio is truly a formidable weapon, especially since fewer strings mean creating a smaller wave and therefore the magic is limited in scale. Using Daisio with a single string, you achieve a nearly 100% energy conversion rate. It will certainly be a great help to you, Eugene, however, regarding the condition mentioned by the vice family head. Within 1 month, you must meet the admission requirements of the Magic Academy. Speaking of which, Eastston affirmed one thing. Using Daisio to meet those conditions is impossible. He hesitated again, wanting to ask then. Her eyes lit up as she instructed, therefore. Because you must meet the conditions to become a mage. Even by practicing every single day, we will have to put Daisio aside and return to the traditional method. At this, Eugene couldn't hold back anymore. Ignoring the tears streaming down his face, he still replied yes. While explaining to Eugene, Eastston used magic to demonstrate. Daisio is a fundamental method that involves cutting the string to compensate for what is lacking. It makes it powerful but difficult to control. The traditional method, on the other hand, may be less powerful but is extremely stable. Just then, she produced a diamond-shaped light in front of him, continuing her explanation. That method is bending the string. Folding a string more than 90 degrees will break the connection and allow each part to be used as separate strings. One angle creates 2 strings, a triangle creates 3 strings, and a square results in 4 strings, as she spoke of these things. Her expression became serious, and this is precisely the cruelty of magic for a mage with only 1 string. Eugene also listened very attentively, trying not to miss a single word. She had mentioned before that for a string's vibration to become magic, it needs at least 4 strings to create harmony. Therefore, with 4 innate strings, one can use magic easily. And even with just 2 strings, you can perform magic by creating an angle, but you, Eugene, need to create a square to use magic. This is a great injustice. At this, she even cited that many mages don't achieve a triangle in their entire lifetime, let alone a square. Even in the history of the Magic Academy, it is rare for a student to complete a square. However, Eugene, because you were born with 1 string, you must achieve a square just to begin learning magic. The starting path for someone with 1 string is that different. At this point, Eastston faced reality and admitted that is why I said becoming a mage was basically impossible for you. But it seems I was wrong. After hearing this, Eugene looked a bit flustered and chuckled. Her melodious voice still echoed in his ear. Although you may not follow the conventional rules, you have succeeded in making Daisio work and using magic on your own. I underestimated your talent, Eugene. At this moment, Eastston took his hand and promised if it's you, you can definitely achieve a square in the remaining time. I will teach you everything I know. He smiled brightly and opened his mouth to thank his teacher. Suddenly, a ray of light shone from his clasped hand at that moment. Eugene admitted, but I missed the right moment to say this. The truth is, he happily presented a square in front of her, saying, I've already achieved a square. To her surprise, he explained Daisio gave me the feel for it. And after I found that feeling again and tried it, it worked. So now I can learn magic, right? Eastston was so shocked she froze with her 2 eyes wide open, forgetting to react. He called out to his teacher, who suddenly shrieked with excitement and grabbed his tiny hand the next second. It's confirmed. Of course you can learn magic, Eugene. You truly are. A child blessed by the love of the god Failen. Returning home that day, he was so happy, sitting with his chin in his hand, smiling to himself while constantly muttering the 2 words magic. Taya, who had appeared by his side at some point, startled him by calling out loudly, "Young master." He looked at her and she asked, "What are you pondering?" "You've been grinning from ear to ear all day, not noticing anyone else." He stammered an apology as his two eyes went wide looking at Jean, praising her. "Good heavens, Jean, I almost didn't recognize you." "You look amazing all dressed up." The little girl politely greeted, "Hello, young master." He then looked suspiciously at Taya. "But these clothes, don't tell me." Before he could finish his thought, Taya confirmed, "That's right, you've guessed correctly." It seems this child is exceptionally bright for her age, so the family head decided to take her on as a servant, a remarkable achievement at 5 years old. He looked at Taya, then squatted down next to Eugene. Eugene was very happy to hear this news. "Really, that's wonderful." The little girl smiled brightly and said, "It's all thanks to you, young master." She then happily reported, "The villagers you saved are also recovering well." This came as a small surprise to him. Eugene suddenly remembered what Rob had said: the village would be destroyed and its people would be exiled or sentenced to forced labor. He then asked worriedly, "So what about those villagers?" Taya replied with her two hands behind her back, "The villagers were sentenced to forced labor. Once they've recovered, they will work at Bill's farm." This stunned Eugene. "What forced labor?" She winked playfully and explained, "Although forced labor sounds scary, the punishment is actually very lenient. Farm work is difficult, but it's 100 times better than slash-and-burn agriculture, and the kind Bill has promised to help them adjust to the work." Hearing this, he felt more relieved. Taya continued, "And apparently stories of the young master's bravery have spread all over town. The elders also seem to intend to show their gratitude," he exclaimed joyfully. "Oh my God, with all these amazing things happening, I'll remember this day for the rest of my life." Jean chimed in, "Me too." But while the two of them were celebrating, Taya's expression turned serious. She suddenly spoke up, "Young master, I didn't want to mention this while you're in such a good mood, but there is one more thing." He looked back and asked, "What is it?" She announced curtly, "The vice head of the family wants to see you today." At that moment, the smile on his lips vanished. The thought of his brother's cold voice sent shivers down his spine. "Eugene, your recklessness in the demon hunt will be discussed after the family council meeting." His face was now covered in sweat as he confirmed, "My brother wants to talk to me." In a very dark hallway, Eugene walked timidly behind his brother. Suddenly, his brother turned his head, making Eugene jump. Hindle Falivia looked at him with sharp eyes and spoke. "I thought you were all right, but you're shivering. That can happen if you're low on syrup. We can talk later, you should get more rest." He quickly explained, "It's not that." Eugene spoke hesitantly, his eyes still not daring to meet his brother's. "It's just, I was thinking about being scolded." Hindle asked, slightly surprised, "Scolded?" He then coldly affirmed, "Of course. I cannot simply overlook such a reckless act." His voice trembling with sincerity, Eugene said, "I'm sorry I was prepared for this." Then Hindle remarked, "However, your courageous actions are certainly an example for the family." He asked back happily, "Really?" Just as a spark of joy ignited in his heart, Hindle heartlessly extinguished it. "If you weren't only 13 years old, Eugene." He immediately apologized, "I'm very sorry." Then his brother's voice rang out steadily, "Despite your youth, you have shown the courage and responsibility of a Falivia." He replied cheerfully, "Thank you, brother." Immediately after, he pointed out in a stern tone, "However, a 13-year-old child confronting an abyss worshiper is not courage, it's recklessness." "You opened your mouth again. I am sorry," Eugene tried to suppress the fear in his heart, his eyes welling with tears, and said, "I am sorry, but brother, I am not sure if you will praise me or scold me." His expression darkened as he questioned, "You are not sure, are you not?" His deep, somber tone made June tremble as he blurted out, "I think I understand now." After a moment of silence, Hindo suddenly spoke. "I am not sure either." You looked at him with wide eyes hanging on his every word as he continued, "I want to scold you, but I realize you have learned something important from that experience. And I am very proud and impressed, but I cannot just praise you and let this go. I am afraid you will take this matter lightly." "Yes," then he suddenly lowered his voice, hugged you, and requested, "So promise me you will not do it again, and I will consider forgiving you." Eugene moved, exclaimed brother. You smiled brightly, took his hand, and made a pinky promise. "Yes, I promise not to cause any more worry." The corners of Hindu's lips curled up slightly as he acknowledged good on this. His hand touched a door as if preparing to open it, saying, "Then it is my turn to fulfill my promise." You asked blankly, "What promise?" He asked in return, "Have you forgotten?" The door slowly opened and a blinding light shone directly into Eugene's face. At the same time, his brother explained, "If you meet the standard to become a mage, I promise to support you in every way possible." Instantly before your eyes was something so bright and beautiful that you could not help but gasp, looking up at the glowing object. Eugene asked, "What is that?" Idia explained, "You should know they say that Lord Failen, while conquering the abyss and creating life, shed tears 2 times. This is precisely one of Lord Phelan's tears. Looking at his brother, you found it hard to believe and asked for confirmation. Really?" Eugene naively expressed his view. "I thought that was just a legend." With his 2 arms crossed over his chest, he replied matter-of-factly, "Of course, there is no way to know for sure if the legend is true or not." While he was still speaking, Eugene had already reached out to touch the object. "But there is no doubt that this thing possesses a great power worthy of such a solemn name. You also had to admit it was very beautiful." Eugene fixed his eyes on that light. Not letting go, he felt a sense of nostalgia and familiarity from within. Perhaps it was because it truly was a tear of Lord Failen. Hindu spoke up again. "I'm glad you like it, this tear of Failen. Especially for a mage with as little mana as you, it is an extremely useful item predicted to enhance all magic from amplification to recovery. There is nothing better than something called the Lord of Magic." Hearing this, your voice trembled as you guessed, "Yes, you are surely not saying all this because," but before you could finish your sentence, he confirmed exactly. "The item I am giving you, Ngok, will be the Tear of Failen." Eugene was so excited he shouted, "Really, they call this gem the Tear of Failen, though it is truly a tear of the god Failen. Whether it is or not is still unknown, but just as the legend tells of Failen shedding a tear to repel the abyss, the reality is that this gem has become a barrier. A barrier separating horizon from the abyss. Of course, eroded by the flow of millennia, it has lost the mythical power that once protected the West by its mere existence. And that duty has since fallen to us, the Falivia family." These latter words from Hilda made your hair stand on end. "However, it still has enough power to protect the capital. It acts as a guardian stone. What would you do if I gave you a guardian stone that is still performing its duty?" My dear Jin, after hearing this, immediately shouted in his face, questioning him. "Have you lost your mind? Even if you're my own brother, I can't just carelessly give away something like that." He very calmly explained his intentions. Hyojin stopped mid-sentence, scratching his head in slight confusion. "Of course I didn't intend to give you the whole thing." His voice trailed off towards the end. "Even if I did, how could you carry something so large? What I'm going to give you is much smaller." Eugene suddenly understood. "Right, of course I misunderstood." Just then a small box appeared in Hindel's hand. "What I'm giving you is this. It's an item created by the most skilled craftsman using a Tear of Failen. When I heard from the teacher that you only have 1 second, this was the first thing that came to my mind. As I said before, a Tear of Failen enhances all kinds of magic, so there is no item in this world more suitable for your case." Hesitating to reach out for it, he asked again, "Am I really allowed to accept this? To be blunt, I'm not a mage yet." Hideo smiled encouragingly. "Consider it an advance gift because I believe you'll achieve it in the remaining time moved." He was speechless and just called out brother. Taking the box from his brother, he smiled and thanked him, promising that he would definitely become a mage and live up to his expectations on a beautiful day. A glass of water was brought out under the scorching sun. The glass was very full. Eugene struggled for a long time to freeze it, but looking at the resulting shape, he was utterly bewildered. "What kind of shape is this?" And Eastston seemed very pleased, clapping her hands. "You finally succeeded in freezing it." He was sweating, "Yes, but I'm not sure if I can call this a success. It's hard to create ice without water, and it's not really the shape I wanted." Looking at what he had created, she remarked, "It's always like that at the beginning. In addition, this shape is due to the influence of the Tear of Failen. It amplifies the vibrations of the strings. You'll get used to it. Anyway, to receive a Tear of Failen as a starting gift for magic, even princes would have a hard time getting a gift as luxurious as this for an introduction." Then she began to estimate its value for one of this size. "It's probably worth at least 2 castles. That's the Falivia family for you." His eyes widened as he asked, "This little thing is worth 2 castles, but she asserted, little you say. It's not easy to find a pure gem of this size." He was so surprised that he exclaimed, "Good heavens, our family is much richer than I thought." Eastston smiled gently and guessed, "You must have been shocked because you didn't know how precious it was. Weren't you? It's to be expected. It's understandable after all. After all, it is the most precious gem in the world." He smiled and replied, "Yes." Then he heard someone say that the most precious gems in the world were buried deep inside the castle, piled up like mountains. Then she pointed and suggested, "Now let's get back to discussing magic. Yes, let's." Her hand reached for the block of ice again as she said, "Eugene, you might be disappointed with the shape you created, but your magic was actually a wonderful success. The essence of ice magic isn't the ice itself, but the coldness. Using the water around you is nothing to be ashamed of. That's exactly what mages do at the elementary level since you can't create negative energy. You need to control the surrounding environment with your magic to create a space with sub-zero temperatures. Therefore, at the elementary level, only those who can control their surroundings can truly succeed in ice magic. That's why the academic world highly regards those who have mastered ice magic by advancing from the basics of magic. The moment she finished speaking, she astonished him by creating an ice rose in her hand and saying they are called rose mages. She gave it to him as a token of congratulations. Congratulations, you've officially become a mage, Eugene. Now holding a piece of paper, she thought to herself, there are only 2 days left. One must admit for someone so confident in their bet. The time was quite tight, but images from the past resurfaced in her mind. When Eastston discovered he only had 1 second, she had told him, I'm sorry. Eugene, 1 second means you can't become a mage. Then she remembered the determined look in his eyes to become a mage back then. After all, you had 1 month. Even when you were discouraged by only having 1 second, you wanted something you wouldn't regret. After everything that happened, she acknowledged how much had happened, and how many impossible things you have overcome. You might think you were simply taught by me, but over the past month, Eugene, I have also learned a lot from you. I hope these days will continue even at the Magic Academy. At this point, Eastston handed him a file. Here, take it. This is the recommendation letter and the certificate I promised. He took it with both hands, his eyes beginning to well up with tears. Eugene, I'm sure you will do well on the entrance exam. Overcome with emotion, he lunged forward to hug her. Thank you. Thank you so much. Patting his head, she consoled him, don't cry. Suddenly, Eastston flashed a mischievous smile. The real magic only begins now. The scene changes to his house where Idia opens the recommendation letter and exclaims, it's incredible that you became a mage in just 1 month, especially with the disadvantage of only having 1 second. If it were anyone else, I wouldn't have believed it even if I saw it with my own 2 eyes. Eugene smiled, brightly abashed. Don't praise me so much. At this moment, his eyes shone with anticipation. I'm finally on the same starting line as everyone else. The real beginning starts now. His uncle smiled with satisfaction. He praised, as always, you're so mature. Suddenly, Eugene remembered what his teacher had taught him. Magic is a study that has a beginning but never an end. From a prospective student to a graduate, you must continue to strive. Then he suddenly declared, no, I'm serious. Then a hesitant look appeared in his eyes as he called out, but uncle, are you really going back to the capital? Idia answered firmly, that's right. I received word from the capital that my patients are piling up, so I have to go back sooner than expected. Even so, I was lucky enough to see you become a mage before I leave. Hearing this, a flicker of sadness crossed his face as he replied with a simple yes. Taking a sip from his hot drink, his uncle then asked cheerfully why the long face. Are you sad because I'm leaving? Suddenly he shook his head frantically, startling his uncle and making him spit out his drink. No, Idia explained awkwardly, I just thought, I'm not a 7-year-old kid anymore and I'm too old to miss you. Then he suddenly said, I will go to the capital myself. He smiled and explained, I'll get into the Magic Academy and go to the capital so we can meet there anytime. His uncle's expression was unreadable, a mix of joy and sorrow. That would truly be a dream come true. Eugene affirmed it's not a dream. As they were talking, Taye suddenly burst in, shouting, Young master. He sat up a little straighter. What is it? What's happening? Taye replied cryptically, it's a disaster. The Countess is on her way back here. This made Eugene's eyes widen in surprise. What then? His expression shifted to joy as he confirmed, really, Mother is coming back. Hearing this name. Idia's face darkened. Scotty is... Eugene suddenly wondered. Mother definitely said if you are stronger, you are to crawl over here. What else could it be about? This made him ask in surprise what Taye replied. I'm not sure. It could just be one of her whims. Eugene naively raised the issue. But why do you look so scared? As if a demon has possessed him. He answered sincerely because the Countess is more terrifying than any demon. At the same time, Idia's brows furrowed tightly. The scene changes to a place where people were hung on 10 racks. Someone's voice rang out, how unexpected. I never thought. You were the one who called us all here. The Dark Witch sat imposingly and questioned the fall of Failen. Wasn't that something you wanted to achieve with your own hands? So you've changed your mind? And then Idia answered firmly, I have not changed my mind. It's just that the circumstances have changed. Odie continued for him, the circumstances began to change from the moment you killed the king. Do you realize the immense effort it took to sacrifice thousands of people without Failen noticing? Idia coldly sneered a king as nothing more than a corpse. Rotting away for thousands of years, such a trivial matter isn't even worth my explanation. He was provoked by these words. Trivial, huh? The fact that you killed the king was also witnessed by the prophet. Suddenly, the dark witch's human cushion spoke up loudly. That's enough. Odie also took the opportunity to scold you disrespectful thing and then announced Scotty has returned. This stunned every single person present. Stunned. What Scotty Odie couldn't hide his surprise, stammering, "She's here." But the last time that woman was seen was in the southern islands. How could she? Idia replied, I don't know. Perhaps she crossed the sea. I'm not that surprised. The problem is, Scotty is on her way. If we want to resolve everything before the prophesied day, we can't just idly wait and let Scotty come and go as she pleases. Hearing this, the Dark Witch spoke up, so that's why you gathered us. She then questioned, are you planning to assassinate Scotty now? If so, I welcome this opportunity. After all, I've been wanting to kill another great hero, Idia replied coldly. I'm sorry, but you're wrong. I have no intention of making a foolish gamble that could get 2 or 3 of us killed just to kill one person. We will avoid Scotty and launch a surprise attack to destroy Failen's tier. That is all you need to know. Idia asserted everything else has been prepared according to the plan. All that's left is to execute it. Odie confirmed that means the appointed day is finally here. The Dark Witch chimed in excitedly. So when do we proceed? His face turned sinister as he answered tomorrow night. At this moment, Eugene's expression was terrible. War. Taya and Jean were struggling with armfuls of items looking extremely urgent. Put the fragile things in the armory. To the training grounds. He stood there observing his surroundings. I see. War has broken out. While he stood there dumbfounded, the servants were shouting at each other. Move that first, no this one. I see. Eugene spoke up. Taya, what's going on? Why is everyone in such a frenzy? Are we being invaded by monsters or something? His face was ashen. He didn't answer, but instead questioned back, do you really need to ask, my lord? Thinking of that figure. Taya asserted it's worse than any monster. The Countess is coming. Remember, Eugene was surprised. Really? It's all for Mother, isn't it? Although Mother is a bit overzealous, isn't this an overreaction? Tai A squinted his eyes to confirm hesitating a bit too much, and Tai A reminded him, but is that the reason you came here to ask me about that? You are delaying a busy person. Eugene innocently affirmed, oh right, I came to ask about this. Remembering earlier when he went to find Uncle alone, he discovered the room was completely empty. Where did Uncle Idia go? His room was empty when I checked, that's what Tai A told me, and he wouldn't leave without saying goodbye. He was expelled, so there was no time to say goodbye. This made him widen his eyes, wondering expelled. Taya hurriedly covered his mouth. No, I just misspoke. In Eugene's mind, it became clear that Uncle didn't return because of the piled-up patience, but rather because he was expelled. At the same time, the Heindel side was busy with a stack of documents on the table. He was drawn by a knock on the door and saw Eugene enter. He casually urged, Eugene, I don't know what you want to say, but can you make it brief? As you can see, for Mother, everything is piled up as if we are preparing for war. He opened his mouth to question his brother, is it true that Uncle has been expelled? In response, his brother's indifference shifted positions. Does this matter? Eugene shouted. If it weren't for Uncle who knows what would happen to everyone there, he was determined to chase after his brother, questioning him relentlessly. Uncle clearly made significant contributions, so why was he expelled? Where's the justice in such an unreasonable punishment? Hindu leaned against the bookshelf, looking very troubled. I don't know where you heard this, but there are 2 things. First, the punishment of Idiofolia is decided by the clan council. The decision is unanimous among the elders in the clan and key vassals. It cannot be ignored, not even by the clan leader. He didn't let his brother finish his sentence. Eugene eagerly urged, so what was discussed in the meeting, what was said to justify the punishment instead of rewarding him? He stopped him by putting 2 fingers in front of him, continuing. Secondly, because Idia Florivia reminds me of the former clan leader Eldos Florivia, who once questioned so naturally when your brother choked you, ran to the capital like a fugitive. I think you have also given up on swordsmanship. Returning to reality, he continued to assert, leaving the family amidst the chaos of grandfather's funeral, so what he said at that time, there was no punishment for Uncle's escape at that time. So when the name of Idealivia appeared again in the council, they couldn't overlook the crime of abandoning the family. But Eugene still felt unconvinced and immediately retorted. So Uncle's achievements were ignored and he was punished for something buried in the past, punished simply for running away. He glanced at him. His brother advised, don't be ridiculous anymore, I've taught you countless times. Why do we bear the title of nobility? It's because we have a duty to protect. Abandoning that duty is not a trivial matter like running away. He bowed his head, showing disobedience. I know, but right now I'm really exploding, shouting loudly. But what benefit does being born a Falivia bring to Uncle Lai? He began to recall the insults Idia had endured since childhood, always in his father's shadow. What a disappointment, a disgrace to our family. If only you were half of Adele. I wish it had been you instead of Adele that day. If only your arm had been severed. Thinking about these things, he couldn't hold back his tears. He never had a life of his own. Everyone looked down on him for not being like his father. They mocked and bullied him, but now that he has acted bravely to save someone, they're punishing him again. What Eugene said was not wrong, and for a moment he didn't know how to react. At this, Heindel continued to assert that the reason for the punishment was because 5 years ago he couldn't endure their torment and left. This made him even more distressed. I was once proud to be a Falivia, but this is not the Falivia I was proud of if this is truly the will of the elders of Falivia. Then let me attend the next clan council. I will speak to the elders myself. Suddenly, Heindel held up his third finger in front of him. Third, our grandfather. The former head of the clan, Elders Falivia, was killed by Idia Falivia. His words made him freeze as he blurted out what Heindel continued with a grim expression. Only 3 people know this truth. Me as the current head and the witnesses, mother and father, just the 3 of us. Nothing good comes from knowing this. I didn't want to tell you, but I was foolish. If you didn't know the truth, you would never be able to let go of him, the man you were closer to than even Father Eugene truly could not accept this truth. That's impossible at that moment. His brother's steady voice echoed in his ear. Idia Falivia is not as perfect as you think, of course. Even so, I don't believe he's a demon. I believe it was a mistake, a momentary lapse in an extreme situation, and as the battle raged, a voice cried out, "Save me," according to Hindel's account, but regardless of his motives. Idia Falivia crossed a line from which there was no return. He himself admitted at the time. This is the 2nd time a Falivia has raised a sword against their own comrade. Such an act cannot be forgiven. At the same time, the dark monsters invaded again. The soldiers, though terrified, had to go to the front lines to face them. Then they were given the order, all soldiers protect the fortress. This is a full-scale monster invasion. Light the signal fire, even with the truth laid out before him. Eugene still couldn't accept it and decided it was a lie. You're lying, aren't you? How could something like that happen? At this, Heindel coldly continued. The only witnesses, father and mother, decided to turn a blind eye. Father, who always felt guilty towards him, let him escape, and covered it up as a drunken accident. It wasn't the wisest choice because the truth could lead to serious consequences later on. But someday you will understand Father's feelings. Impossible. He was overwhelmed by this unimaginable information, panicking to the point of stuttering, "No way." Suddenly, he rushed out of the room, causing his brother to call out in concern. "Eugene, where are you going?" He answered as he ran. "I'm going to ask him myself. I won't believe it until I hear it from him." At that moment, he rushed past Julia without saying a word to her. He ignored his brother, who kept calling, "Wait, Eugene," from behind. Heindel wanted to chase after his younger brother, but she stopped him. "Where do you think you're going at this hour? Take care of the family now is not the time for that." Immediately after Julia announced there's a fire signal from the Western Front, he asked. Startled, what details 3, her eyes narrowed slightly as she struggled to say red. 4. A large-scale invasion by the monsters. He became panicked, his face unable to hide the tension. Meanwhile, Eugene ran straight out of the house. Looking at the sky and the ground, it hasn't been long since he left. He must be staying the night in the village below if I cut through this forest. I could have caught up to him, but when you ran through the forest, the monsters ahead made you stop in your tracks. Facing them for a moment, you could only stare wide-eyed, forgetting to react. Elias was also very surprised to run into you here, the youngest son of the Falivia house. How? At that moment, a trembling Eugene wondered, "Worshipper of the Abyss, how are you?" Suddenly he realized this was inside the Falivia mansion, and then Eugene cried out in shock. The assembly bell and the red signal flare. He realized it was time. Elias clutched his head, looking extremely annoyed. "I knew it, damn it. This meddlesome kid always shows up at the worst possible time, making everything complicated." Although terrified, Eugene began to reach for his weapon. "Maybe the bell sound is because there are too many of them. I have to create an opening and escape." It was then that he realized a startling truth and blurted out. His sword panicked. He thought, "That's right. I didn't bring my sword." At that moment, Eugene feigned madness, scratched his head, and said, "I'll be leaving now." Suddenly, the man spoke again. "I don't want to harm you because Idia is very fond of you, but now that things have come to this, there's no other choice." Right after Elias finished his sentence, the demon legion surrounded him. "Kill him," Eugene, confused, wondered why. His expression turned incredibly grim. Did my uncle's name just come out of your mouth? And at the same time, Hindle was galloping over on his horse, his face filled with indignation. "You bastards ODI with his grotesque head," exclaimed. "It's truly astonishing." The signal fire has been lit and 1,000 elite soldiers have departed all within just 1 hour. Even the Empire's Golden Legion lacks such discipline. Idia then spoke up. To compare them to a mere ceremonial procession would be unfair. Hearing this, he slightly disagreed, but that excellence will become poison to them. This time, Idia smiled and revealed all forces directly under the family head's command have left the castle. Now the only remaining nuisance is the soldiers. I will handle the family council's private soldiers. It's been a while since I've paid my respects. Everything will proceed as planned. ODI seemed to gradually understand. This is the moment for sweet revenge. He asked, "How does it feel?" His uncle nonchalantly replied, "Normal, nothing special." Back with Eugene, he was closing his eyes tightly to recover his strength when he suddenly snapped them open. He used Falivian's anti-armor technique then, with a twist of his wrist, he easily took down each man. Next was the Falivian-style 4-string cut combined with the Daisio magic sword's fireblade technique. At this moment, Eugene gritted his teeth and spat out Worshipper of the Abyss. The man in the shawl was sweating profusely. This is the youngest of the Falivian family, the one who was bedridden with illness until recently. Elias scoffed. "Daisio, really? How interesting. Falivian swordsmanship is truly exquisite, combined with the talent for seeing the strings. Indeed, it all comes from Ciro." Eugene was utterly enraged. "You snake-eyed bastard! Why did my uncle's name come from your mouth?" Hearing this, the man only grew more amused. "So that's what you're most curious about." The man in the shawl interjected impatiently. "That's enough small talk. The others have already begun the invasion. We can't waste any more time." But the man waved him away. "No, he is mine. You lead the rest, I will not follow you." The man in the shawl looked like he was about to say something. "What?" But Elias turned to him with a murderous glare. "I said I will handle him." Seeing this, the man could only remain silent and submit. Then he silently departed. "Understood, don't be late." This left Eugene in a state of anxiety. "Wait, where are you going?" Elias, however, was ecstatic. "You shouldn't get distracted in front of villains like us." As he finished speaking, he launched a deadly blow towards the boy. Eugene's face paled and he broke out in a cold sweat. "Is that sword controlled by magic? Since it's a physical object, cutting the strings is meaningless. A direct hit could break my sword. This is quite a problem for a swordsman. They have prepared very thoroughly." Finally, Eugene realized. A worshipper of the abyss, what are you doing here?" The man flew into the air laughing mockingly, only asking now. "But worshipper of the abyss isn't entirely wrong. However, I prefer another name. By the great prophet and his apostles on his behalf, we have been reborn as the eternal mechanism." Hearing this, Eugene's eyebrows knitted together. The eternal mechanism. Elias explained, indeed, the life granted by Failen is finite, but the abyss is eternal from the beginning to the future. That is why we are called the eternal mechanism. And Folivian will be the first gift that the Apostle Lord Idia offers to the abyss. Hearing this new information, his face went numb. He clenched his jaw tightly. He charged forward, screaming nonsense. Elias, however, remained calm. "If you don't believe it, then why did you ask?" After speaking, he launched a gleeful attack, which Eugene managed to block just in time. Eugene was also burning with fighting spirit. Suddenly, Elias brought a hand to his mouth in a sinister-looking gesture. Then, with a flick of his hand, he sent Eugene flying. He sputtered in disbelief. Rocks. Then he had to endure the attack, rolling several times. Elias stood with his hands on his hips, full of pride. "You rushed in screaming recklessly just to fall for such an obvious deception. Did you think throwing rocks was all I had? My magic can control hundreds of tons of rock, and therefore the famous swordsmanship of Falivia that you're so proud of, and even your enchantments are useless against me. Unless, of course, you have an unbreakable sword and the ability to cut through stone. It's no coincidence that I was chosen as the vanguard for the invasion of Falivia." Seeing this, Eugene told himself to calm down. This abyss worshipper. His claims aren't empty boasts. He's truly strong. My swordsmanship can't break through his magic, and what's more, I don't have a weapon. But there's still something I can do. Then he remembered Idia. Forget it. He's just trying to shake my resolve with this nonsense. At that moment, Elias spoke again. "You don't seem to want to give up. So what will our little young master use to face the villain now?" Eugene paid no more mind to his words. "I completely anticipated that my weapon might break. The weakness of Daisio is that the backlash from the magic directly affects it no matter how good the sword is. Eventually it will break. That concern gave me a powerful inspiration from ice magic. If it's an ice sword, even if it breaks, I can always make another. Finishing his thought, he exclaimed, I have plenty of swords. Elias looked bewildered for a second, then burst out laughing. He laughed mockingly. For a mage with only one thread to achieve a square formation? What a waste of talent, do you know, that the more threads you break, the weaker the power. If you had even 2 threads, you could have formed a true claymore. But with just 1 thread, all you can create is a small dagger. This reality is precisely why a mage's potential is determined by the number of innate threads they have. Since you've shown me something interesting, I'll show you my full power in return. The maximum number of threads a person can have is 10, and I have 9. Let me show you the difference in our levels. Fires covered the entire village. The captain yelled, Where the hell did those bastards come from? Teams 1 and 3, you're in charge of evacuating the civilians? He shouted. They're exploiting a gap in our forces. This won't be over quickly, the soldiers replied. Understood, Captain, he said with difficulty, not noticing a monster approaching. Damn it, what is the clan council doing during this chaos? The captain turned his head to see a huge monster staring at him. He raised his sword and cursed, I thought I was supposed to get some rest. In my final years, the monster slammed its fist down, sending many people flying. He screamed, Bring it on, you piece of trash! Suddenly someone cast a spell. A wave of cold power flew forward, and before the captain's astonished eyes, the huge monster was quickly frozen solid. He said in confusion, Who could create magic on this scale? Professor Eastston shouted, Is everyone all right? She panted, My goodness, what in the world is happening? The captain exclaimed in surprise, Ah, you're the young master's teacher. Thank you for your help. He wiped his sweat and explained, As you can see, we were suddenly attacked by abyss worshippers. We're just as confused as you are. Could you possibly lend us more of your assistance? A powerful mage like you would be a great help. Christine nervously clutched her hat. She stammered, Yes, I'll do my best, it's only natural. But fighting is completely foreign to me except for play fighting with my pet. Fuji is very fierce but cute. The captain reassured Eastston, not noticing that a piece of ice had already fallen off. Don't worry, we won't put you in danger. Even just supporting us with magic would be... The monster suddenly broke through the ice. It let out a roar and charged at the 2 of them. She screamed in terror while he cursed, Damn it, just as I was saying that. Suddenly, a flash of light blazed from the sky. A streak of light shot straight into the monster's head and landed beside the 2 of them. Both were left gaping as a red-haired person touched down before the collapsing monster. Julia asked, Are you all right, Eastston? The captain replied, Thank you, Julia. Suddenly, with a cry, Eastston remembered the scene from that day. Julia roared angrily, She's just a mere sorceress. What could she possibly know about the master? She silently prayed, Please don't let me mess this up. Eastston chuckled and said it was a blessing in disguise that you weren't assigned to the vanguard and got to stay behind. Julia explained that's because the clan head entrusted the young master to me. She scratched her head, wondering it seems he ran off to find Idia, but where could he have gone? Eastston jumped and shouted what Eugene, pointing ahead, Julia said, What are we going to do now? If the boy chased after Idia, then he must have headed to the village down that path. The words were barely out of her mouth when the area exploded. She stammered, What was that? Gritting her teeth, she cried out. Young Master Elias was frantically unleashing his power. Eugene struggled to defend himself as a light flashed in his eyes. A surge of power materialized in his hand as he said again. The man squinted at Eugene and thought impossible. This young master. He's creating an ice sword with a square using Dacio and remaking it every time it shatters. Is such a miracle even possible for a human? Elias looked at those glowing earrings. He sank into thought. Phelan's tear. If I leave him be, he could keep this up all day long? Elias smirked, raising his hand and thinking, however, the 1-second limit is all too clear. Blue rays of light shot straight at Eugene. He couldn't dodge in time and was hit in the shoulder, spitting out a mouthful of blood. An invisible trajectory of power then struck Eugene in the back. It sent him crashing to the ground. Eugene coughed up blood, his eyes rolling back as he struggled to think from the side. Elias approached with glowing strings on his hands and said smugly, There are more strings. It's not simply about having more power. The strings can be compared to hands. He raised a hand, explaining, So if you have about 9 hands and use 8, you still have 1 left to attack from behind. Eugene's eyes widened in thought this is. Elias spread his arms and countless large rocks hurtled toward him. The man said excitedly, I'd love to play more, but I'm a busy man, so let's end this lesson here. Eugene suddenly realized the difference in a mage's talent lies in the strings. He thought helplessly, There's no way, I can't win. Suddenly, Julia ran up, calling out, "Young master!" A bewildered Eugene cried out Julia. A red light flared from her spear. Julia gritted her teeth as the two streams of power collided, creating a massive explosion. The shockwave shook the surrounding trees. As the smoke cleared, Julia was standing protectively in front of Eugene. She asked, "Are you all right, sir?" He answered with a jolt, "Yeah, I'm okay." Hearing his answer, Julia immediately collapsed to her knees. Eugene shouted in alarm, "Julia, are you okay?" She replied, "Don't worry about something as trivial as this." Julia asked, "But what is the situation here?" "Who is that mage? I don't know either," he replied. "Looks like we've caught a pretty big fish." Elias spoke up, beginning to cast another spell with a smile. "Julia of the magic spear, you're worth my time after all," Julia growled. "I'll start by ripping that smug mouth of yours apart, you abyss worshipper." He laughed nastily, remarking, "Quite the boast for someone with a broken arm." Eugene worriedly wondered, what should I do? Because of me, even Julia is... What should I do? Suddenly, his hand touched something wet. "Water?" a bewildered Eugene asked. He suddenly realized. Eugene recalled his master's words, "Use the water around you." There's no shame in it. That is what mages do. He thought to himself, right water. Only those who can control their environment can truly succeed in ice magic. Eugene ran over and said, "Julia, can you buy some time for me?" She replied with difficulty, "I will buy some time. You should find a safe place." He seriously declared, "No, I'm not running away. I have an idea for us to fight back and win." Julia was stunned as Elias laughed and said, "What nonsense are you spouting?" Tendrils of light shot towards the two of them. Elias roared. With just 1 second, Eugene gritted his teeth as an orange light blasted the tendrils away, creating a huge explosion. He covered his mouth and asked, using Dacio, "On the ground, trying to obscure my vision with dust." Elias exclaimed, "What a foolish trick." Julia charged from behind, but Elias quickly blocked her with rock. He laughed and said, "As long as your attacks can't touch me. Obscuring my vision is meaningless, right?" She clicked her tongue. Julia was thrown back as he laughed arrogantly and said loudly, as expected, "Even the famous Julia can't break through my rock." In that state. "How foolish to attack head-on. Thanks to this 1 second, young master, my job has become easier." Julia smirked and warned, "You fool, look behind you." He froze. Eugene closed his eyes. A diamond-shaped aura slowly glowed in his hand. Elias said contemptuously, "I thought you were preparing some grand spell." How pitiful the carefully prepared spell of a 1-second mage would obviously only be at this level. Before he could finish his sentence, a sword made of water slashed down. He thought in a panic, when did this happen? Elias was bewildered. How could this kid Eugene enunciated each word? "This is my sword." As he slashed down with all his might, Eugene shouted, "1 second," while thinking, "This is mine." Going back a few minutes, Eugene shouted, "Julia, I have an idea that can help us fight back and win." Julia interrupted, "I won't hear of it. I was entrusted by the family head to protect you." Her back resolute, Julia said, "No matter what you are thinking, your safety is my top priority while I buy time. Please escape." Eugene frowned and asked Julia, "Do you think I would run away alone just for that? If you don't want to waste time, then just follow my plan." She pursed her lips, looking at him. Then Julia readied her stance and said, "Do as you wish, but you must escape if it becomes dangerous." Eugene cheered happily. Julia Elias's voice cut in. "What are you two mumbling about?" He attacked, shouting. With just 1 second, Eugene quickly blocked Elias's magic. The large explosion made him unsteady. Taking advantage of the smoke, Eugene left and said, "I'm counting on you." He mused, "My teacher once said that using the environment is also a mage's skill." A stream of light gradually converged into a crystal shape in Eugene's hand. He thought, if I lack the medium, I will seek help from nature, and if that's still not enough. Streams of water were gathering into a sphere. It gradually formed into a water sword. Eugene silently resolved then, until it's enough, I'll just repeat it. As he slashed down, he thought, this is the path I must walk as a mage. Elias was too stunned to dodge. He thought in bewilderment, how is it possible? With just 1 second, the water sword slashed down, cracking the very ground. As the smoke cleared, the moon appeared, revealing the figure of Elias coughing up blood amidst the smoke. He thought in bewilderment, this crazy kid acts as if stacking magic is normal. He just learned magic, and stacking magic is like building a tower. On top of a tower with each stacked layer, the difficulty increases exponentially. At least rock is a solid, so stacking it is a little easier. But even so, how many times did he stack it? He laughed maniacally, his pupils contracting, Elias said excitedly. But that doesn't matter anymore, it was just a surprise. From now on, I won't even give you time to. Before he could finish, a fist landed squarely on his face. Julia clenched her fist and said coldly, You think I would give you time? You fool, then she cried out in pain, making Eugene ask worriedly, Julia, are you all right? Did you push yourself too hard? Julia touched her bandaged arm and replied, I'm fine, but at this rate. I'll just be a hindrance in the fight. She turned her head and said, I will take responsibility for leading the members of the Eternal Mechanism away, so please join the protection squad first. Julia continued, when you are there. The enemy that breached the walls can be driven back. Eugene cried out in a panic. Ah, no. Julia realized it was him. Eugene stammered, all right. He suddenly slapped both his cheeks and yelled, no, what am I smiling for? The capital is in danger. His action left Julia bewildered. Elias suddenly spoke up. Do you think anything would change if you went? It's too late. Julia asked irritably what he explained. Even a single one of our apostles is equivalent to an army, and 3 have already gathered. The fall of Falivia is inevitable. Meanwhile, Idia Falivia calmly strolled through a sea of flames as if nothing was happening. His eyes darted around, humming a tune as he looked up at the burning citadel. Elsewhere, a meeting was in progress, but everyone in the room was terrified. What's happening? Someone asked. We're being invaded by thousands of monsters, another said. This is like a sign of the Northern War. An elder slammed the table, stood up, and shouted, What the hell are you talking about? He roared, It's not a dire situation yet. The person opposite him shouted just as loudly, but we can't ignore that possibility either, he said, referring to that arrogant opening move. I mean, since the esteemed head of the family has stepped in, I'm sure he'll handle it just fine. Eric frowned, watching them argue. What pathetic creatures, he mused. Currently in the council room of the Falivia family, the one sitting there is Eric Falivia, Eugene's grandfather. Eric spoke up to intervene. Calm down, everyone. That is not our most urgent problem. He said we need to figure out how to deal with the Abyss worshippers swarming the castle like flies, even though most of our forces are deployed elsewhere. We can split the forces we have here. An elder asked, What are you talking about? This level of invasion can be easily handled by the guards. They began to argue again. Eric rubbed his forehead and muttered, We need unity at a time like this. He said a plan to split our forces when we're already short on men. What if they attack the council while we're doing that? Have you forgotten that we are the pillars of Falivia? The door suddenly opened. They were still arguing, if we fall, Falivia is finished. He glanced over as Idia stepped in, saying, Hello, esteemed elders of the Falivia family. Edric asked in shock, Idia, why are you? The elders roared, Idia. You demon, weren't you exiled? Do you take the council's decision so lightly? How dare you come here? He ignored the elders' curses and said, So it was you. Idia smiled and replied, I see only you were able to recognize it, but Edric suddenly revealed. So you sold your soul just for revenge? Idia explained it might look like revenge, but you know. That I'm not the type to seek revenge, right? Idia's eyes turned pitch black. There was something. Like a monstrous presence leaking from his right eye, Idia ripped off his eye patch, saying, Just as before, I am merely being swept along by fate. To this, Edric replied grimly, Is that so? His eyes and those of the knights flashed with killing intent. Edric drew his sword and declared, Now pay the price for defying fate. On the other side, 2 figures stepped in. The Dark Witch sneered, How boring. I can't believe the path to the sealing stone is unguarded, Odi replied. Falivia has truly eroded with time. He added, Perhaps by now we've all forgotten the true meaning of the tear. Failen reduced it to nothing more than a symbol of good fortune. Lucky for us. She raised her hand, lamenting, But it's so dreary. This place is too dark. A blue spark appeared on the witch's finger. I need light, she said, and the light flared up. Hindel appeared from behind the Dark Witch. His eyes flashed with killing intent. So you also seek light in the darkness? Hindel asked, his voice a low growl as he prepared to cast a spell. But you... The 2 monsters were terrified. Hindel, she cried out. Odi asked in fear, How are you here? Hindel shouted and swung his arm. You are unworthy to see the light. He stared ahead, thinking to himself, My sword is too short. Hindel watched the 2 of them slowly recovering. The Dark Witch roared in anger. I was nearly sliced in 2, you bastard. She laughed loudly. Good. This is becoming less boring. Hindel looked at his sword and said, This dark energy, it is of unknown origin, and this armor is restricting. He affirmed, A hunter of the 10 Crusades. A Dark Witch, huh? She gave a ghastly laugh and replied, Luckily, this nobleman of yours still has eyes to see. The Dark Witch spread her arms and said, So what now? Are you frightened now that you know who I am? Beside her, Odi cried out, My head hurts so much. Hindel raised his sword. I have heard a great deal about your wicked deeds. His magical energy erupted with his killing intent. Hindel declared, I will ensure you pay the price. Meanwhile, Eugene thought as he ran, the three apostles have already made their move. The seal has been broken and the age of the abyss will begin anew. The thing they pursue is the tear of Failen. I must stop them by any means possible. Einstein suddenly saw Eugene running up from behind and wondered, Eugene over there. Hindle slowly advanced, full of killing intent. ODI called out in fear, Hindle. He asked, how can you be here? Aren't you supposed to be commanding the army in the battle? Hindle replied coldly, I knew you scum had been plotting for some time. Surely you didn't think you could break through Falivia's defenses. With just 1,000 monsters, you were obviously targeting the castle while our forces were deployed. ODI cursed. Damn it, so the troop deployment was a feint. He thought of Elias and said, what was Elias doing? He couldn't even buy us more time. We should have revived the king from the very beginning to prevent this. The dark witch grasped the hilt of her sword and asked, so what? Is that why you've appeared here all by yourself? He replied, that is. The two monsters immediately took a battle stance. Correct, ODI replied. Hindle lunged forward. His sword clashed with hers, creating a piercing sound as the witch blocked all of his slashes. She screamed with a laugh, didn't you say you'd make me pay for my crimes? Hindle gritted his teeth. She continued, this isn't enough to take me down. The two fought fiercely. ODI mumbled while casting the spell 8-rank square cube. Foolish creature! Hindle was startled and turned around. Beams of light had already enveloped him. He thought to himself a spatial point that severs space. ODI twisted his wrist and shouted, shatter the fracture point! The light enveloped Hindle. This will be over soon, he said. The arrogance of Falivia ODI was startled to see an orange light shining from his dark magic. What? ODI cried out in shock as Hindle sliced through his spell formation and charged toward him. He thought, a cutting technique. This is preposterous. Afterwards, ODI was lost in thought, finding the strings compressed into a 4-dimensional cube and severing them in the void between spaces. That is magic designed to counter the eyes of Falivia. Hindle growled furiously. You are using a magic that is forbidden to exist, ODI thought while preparing to cast another spell. Does this mean that the eyes of the Falivia clan leader are on a different level, so there's no chance of winning against him? At least I must buy some time. Thinking that, he pressed his hands down on the ground, causing the earth to crack open and stones to fly up. Hin frowned, his pupils glimmering on the stones where cuts appeared. It quickly shattered into beautiful square pieces, and Hideo rushed in as well. At that moment, the dark sorceress suddenly appeared from behind, swinging her sword and shouting, What are you doing alone? Hideo turned back, thinking that if this continued, this would never end. Her sword struck his shoulder and Zero spat out from the wound. Hin thought it was good to cut her. The dark sorceress's arm was severed and ODI continued to chant from behind. He realized next that she laughed and said, You leave flesh and bones, I'm growing fonder of you, my prince, as she continued to attack his knees and stomach. But we can't endure a long battle! Hideo painfully rolled his eyes and Zero spat out from his mouth. She thought to herself, This is 2 against 1, darling. At this moment, a fireball gathered in ODI's hand. He declared, I won't make that mistake again, as the flames shot out, stating he wouldn't use any tricks. I will destroy you with absolute power, Hindle thought, imagining a group of people worshipping the abyss with such strength. The existence of not retreating is a mistake, so at least his power exploded instantly, his eyes shining orange. Hideo silently resolved, Seda will take you both down to hell with me. Even if I have to die, I will kill you. The orange light suddenly flashed as Eugene rushed in, cutting through ODI's magic, leaving Hideo astonished. He asked, Who is that child? He turned his head and called out, Eugene. He seriously said, I'm here to help Big Brother. The dark sorceress mockingly replied, How adorable. You came to save your brother. Kid, she raised her hand and continued, But what can you do alone? Why didn't you go with your parents? Suddenly, someone interrupted, the third proof of nihility. Einstein pointed his wand at the sky and loudly read, Remove. A white ring appeared covering everyone. She gasped and asked, What is this white space? Hilda struggled to call out nihility. ODI suddenly realized something and screamed in fear. Wait, stop! The dark sorceress said, It seems you know this magic. Eastston spoke up. No one is allowed to move. She trembled as she declared, If this magic is completed. Everyone here. Eastston tightly closed her eyes and said, We'll die. She skeptically replied, What nonsense are you talking about? ODI shouted from the side, Don't act rashly, he explained. It's not nonsense. This is the principle of the universe proven by Neris, the second disciple of Failen. When this magic is completed, this space will freeze to absolute zero and disappear without a trace. She gasped and exclaimed, "What?" ODC thought, "I think Eastston is just theorizing. But she is truly dangerous. I never imagined she would actually succeed in proving that. And also only 6 seconds to recreate the magic of the second disciple." He looked at her and thought about the danger of that mindset. Eastston staggered and said, "I feel so tired." Eugene gasped and shouted. Sister ODI thought to himself, "If we're not careful, she will blow us all away without distinction." The dark sorceress rubbed her forehead and said, "Things are starting to get interesting. Troublesome things always ruin the fun, so what? Do you want us to talk more intimately?" A shouted angrily, "No way! Do you think I would be fooled by such pathetic threats?" "Oh," ODI mumbled, "this is driving me crazy." The dark sorceress screamed, "If you think you can kill me with something like that, then just try it. I will tear you to pieces before that spell is complete." As Eastston cried in fear, Idia suddenly appeared and knocked her unconscious, saying placatingly, "Don't scream so rudely." With a face covered in syrup, Idia said, "You'll startle the teacher." Eugene cheered happily, but Uncle Hideo was suspicious of Idia's smile as he saw Eastston collapse. "But why?" Eugene asked. The teacher collapsed to the ground. The dark sorceress laughed, perfect timing. ODI sighed in relief and asked, "Are you finished with the family council?" A corrupted Idia confidently asserted, "Of course. There isn't a single one left. I've dealt with them all." Those words immediately made Eugene's face darken. "What?" He clenched his fists and gritted out, "Don't say such strange things. Everyone has only been bad-mouthing you today. I'm so confused." Eugene forced a disbelieving smile. There must be some misunderstanding. "Right, it has to be." Hideo realized what was happening, his eyes widening as he turned to see Idia pull the syrup from the wound on his neck, stretching it into a sharp metal blade. "Good," he said, slashing down with his fingertip. Hideo lunged to shield him, and as Eugene fell back, Hideo took the metal blade straight through his chest. Eugene watched as Hideo endured the torture. "How can I accept this betrayal? How did this happen?" The dark sorceress judged him with a bored look. "How arrogant while I'm suffering here. My arm has been cut off. But Idia just gave a token response. You've had a tough time, haven't you?" Suddenly a red dark aura erupted from Hideo. His 2 eyes glowed red as he growled, "Come on. That's not something a doctor should say to his patient." The dark sorceress glanced back, sensing an incredibly powerful presence as he charged forward, the metal blade still piercing him. He delivered a clean slash across her. Eugene was too stunned to speak. The dark sorceress's eyes bulged in disbelief. This guy, how is he still alive with his heart pierced? Staring at Hideo's glowing red eyes, ODI began to tremble slightly. What is with that bizarre movement? It felt like a bad omen, yet he fearlessly yelled, "Get out of the way," as he formed another weapon from the wound in his side. Idia noted, "This is making maximum use of centrifugal force for Livia." He was ready for revenge. His glasses began to glow. Sky Pitzer. An aerial battle began as he blocked the laser beams and charged straight at his opponent. And he slashed. A powerful red explosion erupted. ODI was in awe of the power from both sides. "This is insane." Hideo's form had completely changed. In a doubtful voice, someone asked, "He's still alive," but Idia, with a sinister smile, confirmed no. He's been dead for a long time. And immediately he collapsed to the ground unconscious. Seeing his brother die right before him, Eugene's terror peaked, his eyes filled with despair. The others stood there wondering, is he a zombie? No. It must be the strength of a berserker. They say that people from the north enter a combat state through self-hypnosis, embracing a frenzy. They won't die until the battle is over. And this man is at the very peak of that frenzy. The child of the red monster Scotty, a talented swordsman with the eyes of Falivia and the heart of a berserker. This could have been a disaster. Idia, being of the same bloodline, knew this well. The real disaster would be facing not just the son, but the mother as well. He then wiped his hands on his shirt collar. "Hurry up and let's get this over with." The Dark Witch had something to ask before that. Watching Eugene next to Hindle, she asked for an opinion. "What should we do with that child? He seems to have lost his mind. Should we kill him?" That seemed to provoke Idia. He took a deep, calculating breath. That would be a problem. He suddenly placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, calling out in a savage voice, "My dear nephew," leaving her standing with her arms crossed, unwilling to say more. Back outside with the patrol team, they were bewildered by something mysterious that had rushed past. What just swept through here? Has this world been invaded by a new monster? None of that makes sense. There's only damage on the enemy's side. Another patrol group shouted a report to him from over here. Captain, there are signs that something terrible just passed through here. While the other two argued, you idiot, if it's on our side, why would it destroy our city? Then came the blunt reply, is that so? Unlike their panic, the captain gently undid a button on his shirt and sighed in relief. This is the end. The reason was her figure standing tall in the light as she lifted Hindle. The Lady of Falivia has returned. The war between Scotty and Odie is not over yet. As he spread his hand to let energy flow through the crystal, the dark witch who had been sitting for a while yawned with such boredom that tears welled in her eyes as she asked, Hey, Odie, I'm bored to death here. Is it over yet? He immediately scolded her, what a stupid thing to say. Even if it's weakened. Do you think breaking Failen's barrier by yourself is easy? Being scolded, she flailed her limbs and whined, Be quiet. Damn, it's so boring. Ignoring her, Eugene sorrowfully rushed towards his uncle, catching Idia's attention. This must be a nightmare, right? This isn't happening, right? Then he even knelt and shouted, Right, uncle. The villainous uncle smirked and replied, I'm sorry about this. But Eugene couldn't hold back and screamed, Don't just say you're sorry. Try to explain, uncle, why. Yet the moment his uncle stood up, his overwhelming presence answered for him. This is all for you. You may feel confused and hate me right now. I understand. Not only that, but his eyes also revealed sheer terror. What Idia said in a pleading voice, but please see this as the final request of a pathetic man. Just listen to your uncle once. Gripping both his shoulders, his uncle invited, Let's go talk to the prophet together. And then Eugene felt as if he were falling into an abyss, while Idia laughed maniacally and emphasized, You will understand everything. But the boy was still clear-headed, gritting his teeth as he retorted, That's ridiculous. You've been tricked by the cult, uncle. Unable to hold back any longer, Eugene exploded, summoning a metal blade and charging. For killing my brother, yet Idia just endured it without fighting back. At the same time, the dark witch made a swift move with her hand, but he noticed. You witch, do you want to die? She immediately asked coldly, Are you crazy? You're bleeding. You could even die. It's fine, though. Now I know how serious your obsession is. I won't kill the boy, and Eugene is screaming, Let me go, but I won't let him get away after causing this wound. This is where the third party begins to show its true colors. You understand this, don't you? If you two don't cooperate, I'd rather just finish you both off and end this. Haunted by the boy, Idia clutched his wounded neck, ready to compromise, while Eugene struggled, yelling, Let me go. I'll kill all the Abyss worshippers. It's not just your uncle who's here, the dark witch said as she silenced him. You are too, kiddo. Lifting Eugene up, she mused this cute face would look wonderful with a knife in its neck. Perhaps you'd have grown up to be my type, but it seems your story ends here. Another shadow appeared, its voice startling. Idia, you have an eye for quality. The only man as handsome as my youngest son. In this world is my husband. It was Eugene's mother, Scotty, hands in her pockets, declaring ironically, Both of them are mine. Cornered, the witch's eyes widened, and she stammered, What? Seeing her son in danger, she smiled, but her voice was a warning that boy is mine, so take your hands off him. Seeing the newcomer, the dark witch mercilessly threw Eugene aside, pondering. This woman is the red monster, Scotty. I didn't even hear her footsteps. I'm so confused. This is Scotty. I thought she was a monster, but she looks quite normal. As soon as he finished speaking, she revealed her true form, a face of burning lava. Scotty grabbed the dark witch by the neck, making her pay for touching her son after being away for so long. And the house is a mess. By the way, Idia, is this the work of our little crybaby lord? Thinking he was seeing family again, her uncle chuckled in response. Yeah, something like that. Idia welcomed his family member by drawing his weapon, long time no see sister-in-law. As she broke the dark witch's hand, she replied in kind, It has been a long time. How long has it been since I told you I'd kill you the next time I saw you? All right. She sent her flying with just one hand. Wow, you sound pretty serious, don't you? Of course I am. You could tell her uncle wasn't pleased. If only you'd come a little later, I was about to leave. Wasting no more words, Scotty pulled a giant machete from her coat, remarking how naive you are. It feels like just yesterday you were sniffling and crying, and now you've grown so much. After all the shocking events, he worriedly whimpered for Idia, his voice trembling. Mom, uncle. The expression on her face was both firm and a little worried. She stepped forward and told Eugene, Don't cry, Mommy will be done soon, and then I'll hold you. Meanwhile, Idia was channeling his magic into a crystal. Idia just asked how long she thought it would take and got the answer 5 minutes. I'll try to finish within 5 minutes. The answer was reluctantly processed in her head. 5 minutes. I can do it. If it were just the two of us, then... Right behind her, she began to transform into something. The sound made Scotty look back while Eugene's eyes rolled back in horror at the terrible sight. The witch's entire body blistered into a grotesque form, her mouth twisted with resentment. Scotty, you're the best. Let's fight until we're both nothing but chunks of meat. Her opponent went berserk, but she just casually scratched her ear. That's weird, I'm sure I already choked her. But if you insist I'll play along, I accept. Absolutely delighted, a beaming Scotty hummed, I've never received such a passionate proposal before, not even from my husband. Seeing her like this, Eugene couldn't believe his eyes. His spirits lifted as Scotty began her assault, testing her machete with a few swings. First, she started with a light warm-up, a direct punch that pulled the Dark Witch down and smashed her into the ground. Next was her corrupted little brother-in-law who dared to mess with Scotty. He took a full slap that sent him flying before he could form his syrup into a weapon. The syrup failed to harden into a sword, shattering into tiny pieces as Idia took the hit. The witch lunged from behind fists, ready to strike. In a flash, the agile Scotty kicked out. She held her machete but didn't use it, her foot connecting squarely with the Dark Witch's face. The syrup witch wasn't finished. For daring to touch Eugene, Scotty gave her an extra slash. Meanwhile, Idia held his position, his eyes glancing back to assess the situation. It looks like the two of us can't even resist, and that's Scotty, a total madwoman. She's not even using her full strength yet, and we still need to buy more time. But it will be meaningless if they all die because of it. He temporarily brought his two hands up to cast a skill. This was the time for his final plan. There was no reason to hold back now, and then OD touched his two fingertips together. All the magical rays radiated out, enveloping the surroundings. At the same time, the space gradually turned gray. She tried to move her facial muscles, but it was as if she was petrified, ready to shatter. Time had frozen, everything stood still. OD began to speak. I have stopped time, Lady Scotty. Please, let's talk. Even though Hilda and Eugene cannot move, their consciousness is still perfectly normal. Stopping time, his whole body was drenched in sweat. He struggled to raise his eyes as high as possible towards the giant crystal, completely astonished. Impossible. 11 seconds, it surpasses human limits. Is this guy even human? I have a really uncomfortable feeling, an instinctive disgust, as if my soul is rejecting it. Handen's theorem of time, Handen Failen's seventh disciple, believed that in a space without momentum, time would also stop flowing, just as you are experiencing right now. He was unable to prove this. Because both momentum and time cannot be reduced to zero, but a trick like this is still possible. She writhed uncomfortably, magic that I've never heard of or seen before. I feel like I should kill you on the spot. However, OD, using the freezing skill, still revealed this magic's secret. It is directly proportional to my movement. It only loosens its control over the target. When I move, that being said, things could be much better. I am telling you all the weaknesses of my magic because I truly want to have a conversation. Since she was at a disadvantage, Scotty had no choice but to grit her teeth and endure it go on. And so OD began his introduction. I am a high priest of the abyss and the right-hand man to the god of plagues Nagrin. I have received the immense love of God Nagrin. And if I offer myself as a sacrifice, I can summon a plague that can destroy Falivia. Hearing this, Scotty seemed to waver. Her eyes widened at his next words. Lady Scotty, with your vast knowledge, you surely know of the Black Plague, the one that reduced the population of Eastern Horizon by half, just as he uttered, if it were to be unleashed. Half the population of Falivia will... Suddenly, a cracking sound, a blazing red light shone directly on OD, making him flinch. The ice seal was broken. A voice seethed with rage. You disgusting, tentacle-faced creature. How dare you try to bargain with me like some lucky mutt? He never expected his luck to be this bad. The magic of the 12th disciple follows the laws of the universe, and she just shattered it with pure physical strength. An overwhelming energy radiated from around Scotty. She furiously advanced on him amidst his pleas. Don't come any closer. If you come any closer, I'll release the plague. She glared at him with eyes that wanted to tear OD apart, emphasizing, try it. I hate threats like that the most. Scotty gritted her teeth, her face contorting as veins popped. You think by holding Falivia hostage, I'd be scared enough to let someone with your power live. She flew into a mad rage, slashing continuously. You think you can just use that wherever you want. Die right in front of me. Her body grew larger, overwhelming him as she declared, half of Falivia's population will be buried along with your head scared to tears. OD couldn't believe this absurdity. And then she continued her assault. Both the Dark Wizard and Idia rushed forward, yelling, Scotty, but she wasn't afraid, muttering like parasites as she tightened her grip on her knife. Scotty had only one thought. I will split you in two and kill you at that moment. OD's two tightly clasped hands clenched, he commanded loudly. Stop, we have achieved our objective. A dark space full of eyes was revealed. OD announced, we are retreating, separating space, breaking space-time. She hadn't considered this possibility and was truly shocked. The other group was drawn into the space. The bitter dark wizard shouted, Damn it, Scotty. I'll definitely kill you next time, he also managed to escape saying. I guess I'll see you next time, sister-in-law. She was so stunned, her confidence vanished, freezing on the spot a diversion space magic. He now had the upper hand, and mocked her arrogantly. You've made a fool of yourself. Scotty Failen's tear was not within the area of frozen time. While we were talking, the dismantling process continued. She had let her guard down and was resentful. You still had enough power to carry out the dismantling process while using that magic. Meanwhile, OD declared with smug satisfaction. Failen's tear is about to explode. The explosion will become legendary. Falivia will disappear without a single trace. You dare deceive me! Scotty grabbed his collar and cursed, you bastard. And Odie defiantly yelled, If that's what you want, I'll die right here. Then he even threatened, when I die, I will become the Black Plague and haunt Falivia like a ghost. Faced with a difficult situation, she had to judge calmly. A man with the potential to become a legend in the world of magic was throwing away his life to be bait, but that black thread was suddenly entwined by a golden light. What the hell is that light? The two threads gradually merged under Scotty's gaze. Someone's hand was casting that power. It was Eugene kneeling on the ground. He closed his eyes gently, releasing his magic power, which radiated out into brilliant, glorious wings, startling Scotty. Eugene, that's... And Odie quickly realized the change. The tear of Falivia is stabilizing. No, I can only force it to overload, and yet he's controlling the tear of Failen on the verge of explosion. He was shocked, trying to reassure himself, no, it's not that kid controlling it. It's Failen and his 12 disciples from the heavens. They're interfering through this child. I have to inform the prophet, at least one disciple. My own eyes have seen this. And so Odie activated a giant black hole. I'm sending it. Scotty, standing there, was also affected. She was slowly being pulled into the black hole, unable to understand her opponent's suicidal intent at this moment. But then her gaze shifted to Eugene. It doesn't matter. Eugene, who exactly are you? Eugene's eyes opened with a look of terror and rage. He sat up, clutching his head and screaming, startling Taya. He had a weapon in his hand. He shouted in frustration, I'll kill you! Taya quickly rushed in to hug Eugene, reassuring him, Young master, please calm down, it's all right now. With tears in his eyes, he looked at her and called out Taya. She hugged him, trembling as she comforted him. It's okay, it's all over now. The two of them hugged each other, sobbing. He just called out Taya. Suddenly, a shout startled them both. Son Eugene hastily opened the door and said, Mom is downstairs. Scotty leaned on the handle of her axe and yelled, You're awake! She glanced at him with a smirk and asked, If you're awake, you should report to your mother, right? Taya's face went pale, her mouth agape, while Eugene happily called out Mom again. She reached out her hand, smiled, and said, Come here. He scrambled towards her in a panic, pulling at his hair. Taya was startled and yelled, Young master, that's the old landing strip! She screamed as Eugene jumped into Scotty's chest. Her eyes went wide as she raised her hands and yelled, No, young master. You've been in bed for a whole week. You need to rest. The mother and son smiled and hugged each other. She doted on him like a beloved son. You'd have lost an arm if you'd woken up a year from now. When did you get so big? Eugene trembled and said, Mom, I'm sorry. It's my fault. Big brother Hindle. He tried to protect me and now he's gone. Scotty leaned down to soothe him. Your brother isn't gone. He asked in disbelief. What it seems. Hyojin noticed something. He smirked and uttered, It seems our roles have been reversed now. Eugene's eyes shimmered with resentful tears as he called out Big Brother. His older brother was safe. Luckily, the spear had missed his heart. Scotty happily mumbled, What are you doing? Are you trying to hug him and risk injuring your brother? It seems the spear actually helped stop the bleeding. The mother burst out laughing. And your uncle's terrible skill not only missed the heart, but also helped stop the bleeding. But Eugene replied in a low voice, That's right. Were you actually a surgeon after all? The attacked fortress was quickly restored, partly due to the efforts of the guards in minimizing the damage, and also because the real target of the Eternal Law all along was the Guardian Stone. Unfortunately, I heard the Guardian Stone was destroyed when I collapsed. An excited man roared, The explosion will become legendary. Falivia will disappear without a trace. Still, there was a silver lining. We prevented the worst-case scenario, the explosion of the stone. What a pity that Falivia's protection stone was destroyed. A concerned Scotty asked, "You don't remember what happened?" Eugene replied in confusion, "Auntie, but it's not a big deal. The real power that protects Folivia from the abyss monsters isn't the protection stone, but the brave warriors fighting on the front lines. On the westernmost front against the abyss, where thousands of monsters attacked, a memorable victory was achieved with minimal casualties thanks to his brother's swift support. At least we can say the number of casualties was reduced, but no matter by how much war still claimed many lives that day. Folivia lost 21 noble members of the clan council and hundreds of brave warriors. Rob hung his head crying and muttered through gritted teeth, those bastards of the eternal law. They killed my grandfather Eugene. I will become stronger than you to make sure Folivia never has to suffer such humiliation again. Eugene's lips curled into an icy line as he said, "So will I. I will become even stronger, strong enough to make the eternal law pay. But do you really think you can become stronger than me?" Rob clenched his fists and retorted irritably, "You just have a small head start. I'll catch up in no time. Don't act so high and mighty just because you're going to the Magic Academy." Eugene glanced down at his fist and scoffed. "The Magic Academy? I am not going to the Magic Academy." His face filled with determination as he said, "I will stay and protect Folivia." Stunned, the other two asked in disbelief what the scene shifts to another place. Ancient houses are clustered together. Inside a room, Eugene says with his head lowered in embarrassment, "After all the effort you put into teaching me, I'm sorry, teacher. I think I finally understand what responsibility is. People do things they don't want to in order to protect what's precious to them, right? But I think I've been too selfish." Eastston called out bewildered Eugene. He continued in a low voice, "Being born a noble with heavy responsibilities, yet only wanting to do as I please." Her expression darkened as she was about to speak. Suddenly, a somber voice spoke up. "You're saying this for your mother to hear, aren't you?" Eastston trembled while a startled Eugene yelled. Mom Scotty pinched his cheek teasingly. "You whine just like your father? Don't bother your teacher anymore. Come outside with me for some fresh air." Sunlight shone on the mountain where the two stood. Scotty turned to her son and asked cheerfully, "Look, isn't it beautiful?" Eugene stepped forward and hesitated. "Yes, but what did you want to talk about? Why did you call me out here?" Scotty enjoyed the cool breeze, then said softly, "About you giving up the Magic Academy. It's for revenge on Idia." Hearing this, Eugene looked flustered for a moment, then calmly replied, "Yes, of course I have to get revenge. One day I will make him pay." With her hands on her hips, she looked up at him and asked nonchalantly, "Is that so? To me, it seems your heart is filled more with confusion than with a desire for revenge, wondering why. Why Idia didn't kill your brother and instead spared him like that." Instantly, Eugene looked up stunned and replied he did. "That's right. He really let my brother live, didn't he?" She crossed her arms and analyzed, thinking it was a coincidence would be comforting, but that's unlikely. Eugene timidly mumbled, "Then why did he—" Suddenly, her expression changed as she asked suspiciously, "You seem very curious." Confused, he replied, "I do." She gritted her teeth, glaring at him as she burst out, "He killed dozens of your relatives, and because of him, hundreds of warriors died." A chill went down Eugene's spine. She hit him as she scolded, "And yet you're more obsessed with the fact that he spared your brother. You claim you'll get revenge, but instead of fanning the flames of vengeance, you're busy looking for reasons to forgive him. If Idia told you some sob story, would you be ready to forgive him? With that thought, you think you can get revenge. Now I will fix that pathetic attitude of yours." Eugene lowered his head gently, wiping his cheek, and muttered, "Why is it wrong to wonder?" He looked Scotty straight in the face, resentfully blurting out, "Mother, you always left as you pleased. Father was so weak he spent half a year recovering in the capital." He clenched his fingers, adding resentfully, "For me. More than mother and father, my big brother and uncle felt more like parents. Isn't it natural to wonder about them?" Suddenly, Scotty put her arm around his shoulder and replied cheerfully, "That's right, that's it. Be honest just like that. Don't try to force it without any real desire for revenge, worrying about what others think. You were miraculously given a chance at a second life. Are you going to waste it worrying about what other people think? Do what you really want." Eugene pondered her words. "What do I really want to do?" His expression then became distant as he mumbled, "But what I want is magic. With Folivia under attack, how can I enjoy magic by myself?" Then he heard Scotty speak. Just Folivia, he was stunned. She smiled gently and continued, "If you want to become a mage like the god Failen, you need to look beyond Folivia." Eugene looked at her timidly and asked, "What?" "How do you know my dream?" She replied with a wicked smirk, "Of course your brother told me. That kid gave a whole speech full of stories when I asked about you." Eugene covered his ears in embarrassment and shouted, "Not again. He only told you." "Right. He didn't go around town talking about it. Did he? Scotty asked with a cryptic smile. Why are you embarrassed to have a dream like that while being a mage? For a moment, Eugene frantically shook his head and whined, no, it's not like that. It's just that big brother always... Immediately, Scotty put an arm on her son's shoulder to soothe him. Don't worry, you're not the only fool in Falivia with such an outrageous dream. The fool of Falivia. Edel Falivia wasn't bad at being a fool either, Eugene asked in confusion, father. When I was known as Scarface, I wielded my sword with anger and fighting spirit fields where I certainly had talent. At the age of 22 in the land of warriors, I had no opponents left. A handsome young man sheathed his sword with a charming smile and asked, May I have this dance? My lady, he was Edel Falivia, 22 years old. Your father appeared. Scotty gave a faint smile and said in a low voice he looked truly pathetic, hearing those words from her. Eugene was truly shocked and asked what she remembered Edel's doting smile and his gentle, teasing voice even when he made Scotty angry enough to fight him. Even so, I thought I had no rivals left, but to think a fool who knew nothing about real violence could be my equal, that was an unbearable situation. Scotty threw a stone hard and cursed die. I couldn't stand it. The humiliation made me tremble with anger. How could a fool like that compare to me? Right after that, I found out why. I went to Mount Nauska for everything that foolish man said. Scotty saw Edel drenched in syrup, killing the monsters sincerely. The heir of the noble family Falivia had overcome his family's objections. He looked at her lovingly and called her my lady. Because he was sincere about his dream of peace, the man Scotty reached out his hand, saying everything was over. Strong enough to end the war, he sadly spoke in a low voice. I'm sorry, my lady, please forget my words from that drunken night. Now I have become like this. Suddenly, Scotty interrupted. He fell silent. A warrior should not talk too much. Edel looked at her and said, my lady. She glanced at the peaceful dawn approaching. Falivia is a land with endless enemies, and a place where one wishes to reside is not bad to start my second life, so Mother took him for herself. Kidnap this man before anyone else realizes. Every time Mother sees the jade eyes of her child, she remembers that day. In that moment, you resemble your father, not your mother. You are too weak to live like her. Don't self-immolate with anger like her while pursuing your dreams. Don't doubt them like a fool. Eugene pursed his lips, furrowed his brow, not crying. Scotty once again embraced his shoulders, encouraging him to see his mother's man fall into reality once it had exceeded her endurance. His cheek was swollen. He firmly declared, my mother will become a sorceress like Failen. Just as the god Failen saved me from suffering, I will become someone who can help others. That will be an unshakable thing. I wish to see my child so confident. Scotty proudly exclaimed, that's how it should be. Eugene nodded in agreement. She glanced at her son, thinking perhaps she should be gentler. The carriage was already waiting. Eugene slowly stepped onto the carriage. In front was his family, peacefully bidding him farewell. He cheerfully leaned out, looking at the bulky carriage driving away. Eugene sadly poked his head out to wave goodbye one last time, his face filled with happiness and joy. On the carriage, he shouted the Magic Academy. Taya worriedly shouted, don't lean out like that. It's very dangerous. Hindel's calm expression wondered, so why didn't Idia kill you? Scotty crossed her arms, glancing at him teasingly. You're curious too. He hesitated to answer. At least you should know the reason, right? Mother just guessed. But going this far, your uncle perhaps doesn't have the courage to face any more hatred. That is his misery. Mother forgave your uncle out of pity, and this is how he repays her. Indeed, one should not start doing things they have never done. Hideo closed his eyes and sighed. No wonder Mother hid Eugene, but doesn't she regret sending Eugene away like this? Mother saw the boy very little in the past few days. Scotty smiled, lowering his head softly, saying, staying in Falivia will not make the boy laugh anymore with the elders of the family who are now gone. Their struggle for status will surely lead to a massacre. Of course, the one who swallows everything will certainly be the master of Falivia. A robe of Hilda fluttered, he exclaimed in frustration. I feel uncomfortable using the legacy of our comrades we just fought alongside not long ago. Scotty frowned, smirking, pointing out that to become a noble. You need the courage to stab the king in the back, not just your comrades. You are only half like your mother. All right, then, let Mother give you a reason to be ruthless. At the far southern horizon, Mother saw the barrier separating the abyss from the broken horizon, and the abyss looked back at her through the gaps. In the barrier, the feeling of experiencing one's existence was too mundane. That was Mother's first time basically admitting she was also afraid to hear that word from Mother Hin. He incredulously asked, What nonsense is Mother talking about? She pondered for a moment, then turned her face seriously and replied, I'm not joking. Do you think I came back just to joke? Soon there will be a war with the Abyss that will make the Northern War of 21 years ago pale in comparison, and a sudden uprising among the worshippers of the Abyss. It might not be unrelated. Hin's face turned pale as he asked suspiciously, Did Father know about it too? Then Scotty thought for a moment before explaining, About half of what I just said is based on your father's calculations, and the other half is from what I saw on the southern fringe. In the carriage, Eugene held a box, curiously asking, What is this tie-A? Looked at it and replied softly, Oh, that was sent with you, so when you meet in the capital, your father will know. He hurriedly shook the box, saying doubtfully, It makes a noise when I shake it. tie-A screamed in fear, That is a gift from the lady to the count. The carriage shook relentlessly, and the voices of both could be heard. Let me open it just once, don't even dream about it. Scenes drenched in syrup and the humiliating words of that day surfaced in Idia's memory. You pathetic creature. It should have been you instead of Adele that day. What a disgrace to the Falivia family. It would be better if you died. In that dark scene, a light suddenly appeared and caught his attention, and from within that light, a small, adorable Eugene crawled out and moved towards Idia. Upon seeing his uncle, Eugene smiled brightly and called out to him. His appearance moved Idia to tears. Back in reality, Idia lay in a pool of red syrup and mumbled the same dream. Even after getting my revenge, I cannot escape the past. So in the end, revenge was meaningless. Suddenly, his eyes glanced to the side, and he said in a low voice, But what is wrong with you? Idia called out to Iceland coldly. Whether from a burst of kindness or something else, Iceland gently asked Han, Are you all right? Idia, with his usual indifferent attitude, asked with cold sarcasm, as you can see. Did you come to see me personally just to ask how I am? Iceland ignored his unpleasant face and replied casually, Of course not. Then he mentioned Eugene and the miracle that the kid named Eugene had created. The elder of Nagrin witnessed it was the news he delivered to Idia. The prophet has made a judgment. These words surprised Idia so much that he exclaimed, What? But Iceland calmly relayed the message. He said not to worry about it. After some thought, Idia agreed with the prophet's method. I think so too. After all, he is just a child. Suddenly his expression turned terrifying and he questioned in a growl. But why did you personally deliver this news to me? Iceland was amused by this look and felt the urge to tease him. I thought you might be curious since he is your beloved nephew, is he not? Suddenly he burst out, I hope nothing bad happens to the boy. In his heart, Idia suddenly remembered Eugene's sweet words, I will go to the Magic Academy and to the capital. He quickly focused on the main point, the Magic Academy, while also noticing Eugene's excitement when mentioning it. So we can meet each other there any time. Without hesitation, Idia quickly ordered a maidservant contact Elias in the capital. The maidservant immediately obeyed and asked, Understood, my lord. What message should I send? Tell him to protect Eugene with the life I gave him. Meanwhile, Iceland stroked an orb in his hand and remarked, Eugene Falivia seems to be well loved by Failen. A sinister smile spread across his lips as he said with certainty, But if the prophet says not to worry, it certainly will not affect the big picture. Confident as he was still quite wary of Eugene. But there is no reason to keep a stumbling block around just because it is not blocking the path. As he said this, Iceland suddenly crushed the orb in his hand, especially if that stone is in my territory. Then he ordered his subordinate, I am leaving this matter to you. Soho, eliminate him quietly. Soho respectfully accepted the order. I will follow your request, Apostle Iceland, he uttered with calculating words. I just happen to know someone who is perfect for the job. The scene shifts to the Hebronia Kingdom, the Kingdom of Irath. Eugene is extremely excited and fascinated by everything here. So this is the Kingdom of Irath. There's so much to see. He's like a curious cat looking here and there. Amazing, Taya look a cat. His behavior made Tai-A so embarrassed he didn't know where to hide his face, but Eugene paid no mind to his subordinate's shame. Eugene continued to excitedly try one dish after another, then laughed and said, Taya, try this. They call it a frozen lizard skewer. Funny, right? Tai-A could only say helplessly, I understand you're very excited, young master. He lowered his voice to warn Eugene, but it's dangerous to act so carelessly in the capital. With an innocent face, Eugene turned and asked, why is that? Tai-A had no choice but to explain with a guarded expression, the capital is vast and crowded full of dangerous people. From what I've heard, it's teeming with arrogant royals and nobles, obsessed with power. What's more, I've heard rumors that the greedy, corrupt merchants are no better than thieves. And besides the greedy, this place is also home to madmen and dangerous mages who would do anything for their research. Lastly, there are those who operate in the shadows, not to mention the fact that it's crawling with the dregs of the underworld. Right in the middle of a crowd, Tai A bluntly declared, "It's a city of crime that's the capital of Irath for you, sir." Naturally, his words were overheard by everyone, and it made them furious. "What are you babbling about? You country bumpkin!" Unaware, he continued to declare loudly, "Acting like a hick will get you robbed even if you're on your guard. Do you understand?" After listening, Eugene replied calmly with a hint of sarcasm, "Tai A, I understand. Your prejudice is quite severe, Tai A." His words made Tai A jump and yell, "What?" Nevertheless, he was still adamant about warning his master. "It may seem that way, but we must be extremely careful." Of course, Eugene paid him no mind and just replied, "Really?" Just then, a voice suddenly cut in, interrupting their tedious conversation. "Excuse me, sir." A beggar child approached timidly and pleaded, "I'm really hungry. Could you spare anything?" The sight moved Eugene to pity, who exclaimed, "Oh my goodness," but Tai A bluntly shooed the child away. "Go on, go away. Get lost. Do you have any idea who this is?" His attitude made Eugene naively reply, "Why not? There's still the other lizard skewer." Just as Tai A was proudly boasting about his master, he suddenly realized his luggage was being pulled from his grasp. "He's from Florivia." The child stealing his luggage was so startled that he stammered, "A flow." His face was full of confusion. Tamia the thief was equally shocked and muttered Florivia. Eugene finally realized what was happening and yelled, "Pickpocket." The moment he thought to himself, "Wait a minute," Tai A had already started shouting after the thief. "Tamia, stop, wait." The pitiful beggar child from before also took the chance to flee, turning back to taunt Tai A and Eugene, "You idiots, country bumpkins." Only now did Eugene naively realize, oh, so they're accomplices. The kid kept running while taunting him, "Eat that lizard yourself." The situation made Tai A both flustered and frantic, and he screamed, "What do we do? The gift for the count is in there." So without a second thought, Eugene let out a sigh and then chased after Tamia, not forgetting to call back to Tai A, "I'll get it back." His sudden action left Tai A stunned, exclaiming, "What?" Though he was dazed, he fortunately recovered his senses and called out to Eugene amidst the chaos. They didn't notice that someone was eating while watching them. "You need to register at the Magic Academy today, young master." No matter how much Tamia yelled, Eugene just ran off as usual. "Just report it to the guards. Get back here." The one who had been eating and watching them was none other than Soho. He judged the two of them to be quite chaotic. Back to Tamia, who was running for his life, the main reason being that Eugene was hot on his heels. "Stop right there. The fact that you can keep up with me is making Tamia a little terrified. This is crazy." And so the kid had to go full throttle to shake him off, which made him a little surprised and exclaim, "He's surprisingly fast." Tamia, while hastily fleeing, wondered how this country bumpkin could chase him through these alleys. The kid didn't quite understand. No matter how fast he was, why couldn't he shake off Eugene even though he was always trying to misdirect him? While running, we go back to Eugene, who was using his divine eyes. He could feel how useful these eyes were. When facing real battles, his senses became sharper. Beyond muscle movements and the vibrations of strings, he was well aware of the immature attempts to shake him off. "I'm starting to see more. He probably tried to confuse me by leaving false trails, however, all of it is useless in my eyes. But in my eyes, all the tracks appear right before me. Even the real tracks are crystal clear. Combining these tracks reveals the escape route. That kid's true one. There it is." Finally, Eugene caught up to Tamia right here in an alley. I don't know what he saw, but his face was filled with shock. It turned out Tamia was being held roughly by the hand, causing the kid to scream in pain. My hand, the one acting so violently, was Soho. As soon as he saw Eugene arrive, he casually greeted him. "Hello." He lifted Tamia right up and asked, "This is the one you were chasing, right, Eugene Florivia?" Before he could even remind Eugene about the capital's crime problem, Eugene suddenly knocked his hand away from the child. "It seems this is your first time in the capital. There are a lot of bad guys like him here, so be careful." Eugene's face was full of annoyance as he growled, "What are you doing to a child?" That attitude made Soho ask, "Are you mad at me?" Fearing Eugene would misunderstand his good intentions, Soho explained, "But I think you're mistaken. He's a thief, and I was just helping you." Eugene obviously knew that. He was just annoyed by the man's roughness. "I know, but there's no need to break the kid's arm." The man paid no mind to his words and casually assumed, it seems you don't know about these people. How terrible these people are. Even if you break their legs, they still won't learn their lesson." After saying that, he glanced towards the little thief, who took the opportunity while they were talking to run away. "Look there." just as Soho was about to mock the little one. Even after being saved, some people are just ungrateful. Then Eugene shoved him hard to one side and said, "Shut up!" "Huh." Seeing him walk forward, he asked with curiosity, "You're going to chase him?" His stubbornness made him ask again, "Why are you doing that? Are you trying to reason with him?" Obviously, those words angered Eugene, who gritted his teeth and asked, "Are you looking for a fight?" With an annoying nonchalance, Soho stepped back and replied, "Sorry, I did not mean to provoke you. I'm just genuinely curious to hear your thoughts. The name Folivia makes people see things differently, does it not? If there is a peaceful solution, then I will admit I was wrong. Seeing that you would not even look at him, he just kept rambling on. I should have introduced myself sooner. I am Levon, son of a common merchant in the capital." Seeing that he was finally being polite, Eugene deigned to turn his head and say, "Is it not better to try talking than breaking a child's arm?" After that, he politely shook Soho's hand and introduced himself. Eugene Folivia, youngest son of the Folivia family, as you seem to already know. That action of his made Soho acknowledge him as expected. Then he continued to speak. Coming from a merchant family, we have all sorts of information. His mind was currently busy thinking that was not just a random comment for him. A curiosity grew within him. Why are the apostles of the eternal law interested in someone like him? And to answer that question, he decided that testing him a little would not hurt, so he let Eugene know. "I also know the thieves' hideout." Upon hearing this, Eugene exclaimed in amazement, "Really?" Meanwhile, in a dark alley in the capital, some thugs started beating the children because they did not bring back any money for them. Among those children was Tamir. The boy who had just stolen Eugene's bag trembled in a corner and felt lucky, thanking the heavens, just as he was busy lamenting his fate. He had no idea that two people, Eugene and Soho, had seen everything that was happening in this slum. "I will not get beaten today." Soho looked at the speechless and shocked Eugene, then asked in a low voice, "This is not quite the right atmosphere for a calm discussion, is it?" Looking at Eugene's wide-eyed and shocked face, Soho could only assume that he had lost his mind. And indeed, Eugene now looked as if he was scared out of his wits. How could this be? It seems this was also within Soho's predictions. Indeed, looking at the reality, it could only happen this way. He judged Eugene in his mind. You grew up sheltered under the name Folivia, you can only shamelessly play the hero. His eyes were fixed on Eugene, as if he was expecting something. Knowing what I expect, I will say something nice to him and then leave. After a moment of silence, Soho decided to soften his tone and advise Eugene. "Go back. There is nothing good about getting involved with such scum. Everyone knows the alley thugs are connected to the Abyss." His words made Eugene ask suspiciously the Abyss, but he just kept saying that the stolen item could be handed over to the guards. "Are you not enrolling in the Magic Academy today?" Hearing this, Eugene was stunned and stammered out an "Magic!" Then, as if possessed, he mumbled to himself, "That is right. I need to enroll in the Magic Academy because I have to become a mage." His voice slowly rang out. "And the reason I want to become a mage is because I was saved by the god Failen." Suddenly, he jumped to his feet and yelled, startling Soho slightly, "I also want to become someone who can save others." At this point, Eugene finally noticed Soho and turned to him saying sincerely, "Thank you for bringing me here. I can handle it from here, so you should go back." He gently and worriedly advised Soho to go first. "If you stay here, you could also be in danger." His words and actions startled Soho, who shouted out what his eyes were filled with horror. "Are you really going to fight?" He never expected Eugene to actually stand up for people he didn't even know, for kids he had never met before. Back with the poor children who were still being beaten? "You bastard, I should feed you to the dogs." Before that guy could hit the child again, Eugene landed a kick right in his groin and yelled, "Or should I hand you over to the guards?" His presence left the thugs and the children stunned into silence. After a moment, whispers erupted. "What is this? Who is this guy? Who is he?" Just then, Eugene put on a commanding air and ordered the thugs, "If you repent right now and promise not to hit these children again, I will let you go." Every word he spoke left them completely dumbfounded. And my purse too. Give it back." At that moment, the guy Eugene had kicked in the groin suddenly roared, "You idiots, what are you waiting for?" He ordered his lackeys to grab Eugene. "Get him." Suddenly, Eugene grabbed a whole bucket of water from somewhere. Then he threw it straight at the thugs and yelled, "I knew it!" The moment the gang was hit by the splash of water, they realized in horror that it was magic. In that instant, one of them tried to sneak attack Eugene. "You little brat." Obviously, Eugene had already seen it and dodged with ease. What's more, he even gave the guy a punch right in the face. His abilities made the children's eyes widen in complete admiration. After dealing with that swarm of pests, Eugene immediately turned to check on the kids. "Are you all okay?" He also kindly tried to reassure them, "Don't be afraid." Just as he was about to play the hero and say, "I will protect you," he suddenly heard the voices of some shameless people. Those shameless people were forcing the children to be human shields. "You brats, what do you think you're doing? Your families are being attacked and you're just standing there watching. How can you just stand still, you ungrateful orphans?" This scene made Eugene freeze. I'm sorry. The poor child's pleas for mercy echoed in his ears. "Please spare our lives." That chaotic scene threw him into turmoil once again. Why did it have to go this far? Meanwhile, Soho was observing everything from up high. What just happened forced him to reevaluate Eugene. If defeating bad guys was enough to solve everything, then what problems would the world even have? You're not just some young master who's all talk. I have to admit that. However, there was one thing he still had to criticize. But in the end, you have nothing but a little courage. As he was muttering to himself, he suddenly noticed something. "You're nothing special at all." Down below, a thug yelled loudly towards the kids hiding behind Eugene. "You kids hiding back there, what are you doing?" He actually ordered the frail, bony children to take down Eugene. "If you don't want to die, pin him down." While the big guy with a brain the size of a grape was busy scolding the children, a mysterious figure appeared from nowhere. "Do you think he'll be here forever? Anyone who hesitates now will definitely get a beating later." Right at the moment, that guy was about to spout more curses. So frustrating. Suddenly, he was sent flying by a slap from the mysterious newcomer. Then the mysterious figure slowly uttered what brings... It seems this person's appearance has left Eugene quite shocked. This person. The tall figure with an appearance no different from a monster's spoke slowly. "A person as noble as yourself." Regardless of what this person was saying, Eugene could only think he's so strong. While the figure respectfully asked him doing in this filthy place again. It seemed that the entire gang of thugs here knew the mysterious person. So they were furious when he hit them. "Father Joseph, why did you suddenly attack us?" The one called Father Joseph became enraged at being questioned by this thug. He mercilessly beat the man and roared, "Shut up, you pathetic scoundrels! Have you lost your minds beating up children?" The old man cursed as he beat him relentlessly in front of Eugene, saying, "When you see someone of high status, you either get beaten like a dog or you wag your tail like one." After teaching this unruly bunch a lesson, Joseph then softened his voice, turned to Eugene, and asked, "He is an uneducated brute. I apologize, my lord, but may I ask what brings you to this wretched place?" Although a bit intimidated by the old man, Eugene answered honestly, "I was looking for a stolen item, but then I saw these children being brutally beaten." His words made Joseph a bit embarrassed and flustered. To see such barbaric behavior from these uneducated men. "It must have shocked you, those rotten bastards. I will discipline them myself. We will also find your item at once." Then he suddenly exclaimed, "That's right, my lord. May I have your name?" "I assure you that something like this will never happen again." Without any hesitation or fear, Eugene stepped in front of Joseph and introduced himself in a clear voice. "Eugene Florivia, the youngest son of the Florivia family. We will be staying in the capital from now on, so remember to act wisely." As soon as he heard that Eugene was from that legendary family, Joseph's face filled with surprise as he exclaimed, "Florivia?" Then he hesitated and asked, "If you are the youngest son of the Florivia family, then you must be the one suffering from that incurable disease." Eugene quickly confirmed, but was also curious as to how the old man knew. "That's right. How did you know about that?" "Asterisk. Am I that famous? Why does everyone know Asterisk?" Suddenly the old man became enthusiastic and gushed with admiration for Eugene's uncle. "Of course we know. You are the beloved nephew of Lord Idia. There is no one here who has not been blessed by Lord Idia's generosity." And then the old man revealed something shocking. Making Eugene's eyes widen in astonishment, he said, "Lord Idia ordered me to protect you, Lord Eugene." Eugene shouted, "What, really?" Meanwhile, Soho sighed upon seeing someone arrive to protect Eugene. Asterisk. "All of this is because of my own unnecessary curiosity." His eyes filled with killing intent gazed down below. "I've missed the easiest chance to kill Eugene Florivia." And Eugene, upon hearing Joseph knew his uncle, hurriedly asked, "So you know my uncle? Can I meet him?" Seeing him so agitated, Joseph smiled reassuringly. "Please calm down." Suddenly his face took on a sly look as he chuckled and asked, "It seems you have many questions. This conversation might take a while. Shall we go somewhere for some tea?" Eugene was about to say something, then hesitated. "It's all right today. I have time. He seemed to remember something and jumped in surprise. That's right. It was only then that he remembered he needed to register for school. Today, I have to register at the Magic Academy. A while later at the academy under Tamiya's assessing gaze, Eugene was calmly talking to someone. I'm sorry I'm busy today. It seems we'll have to say goodbye before we've had a chance to talk. Yes. It turns out he was kindly treating Tamiya while instructing the little boy. If those adults bully you again, just run here. I'll scold them for you. You're very fast, so you can do it right. Flustered by his kindness, the little boy replied, yes. After a moment of treatment, Tamiya's arm was all right. Luckily, your arm isn't broken, so just bandaging it up a bit will be fine. Suddenly, Tamiya, with tears in her eyes, asked, why would you do that for someone like me I tried to steal from you? Eugene replied sympathetically, I don't think you're a bad person. You're just scared of adults, aren't you? Yes. He hugged Tamiya tightly and declared, I will protect you from those bullies. The important thing is what you do from now on, understand? A deeply moved Tamiya replied, yes. This scene left Taya a bit bewildered what happened after you went to catch her. He was also kind enough to remind you, aren't you going to register, young master? The exam is tomorrow. But you seem quite relaxed, don't you? His reminder made Eugene jump and shout, that's right. And so, on the day of the entrance exam at the Mage District in the capital inside the Payday's Magic Academy, there were many people. Seeing such a large crowd, Eugene couldn't help but exclaim, there are so many people. The kingdom has a lot of mages, huh? Just then Soho appeared out of nowhere and explained they're not just from the kingdom. Those mages also come from the empire, the southern islands, and even distant lands to the east. Furthermore, he added that this place is said to have been founded by the 10th disciple to protect the teachings of the god Failen. This is the Pade's Magic Academy. His appearance startled Eugene, who called out loudly, Levan. Then he eagerly asked, Levan, you're a mage too? Soho deceptively replied, yeah, only a two-circle one. He himself didn't hide it, saying 2 circles is already very impressive. I only have 1. Soho smiled and honestly revealed, I know you're famous. That's why I felt a sense of familiarity and approached you yesterday. And then things turned out like this. Eugene recalled the shocking events of yesterday and casually remarked, so that's how it was. Next, Soho asked curiously, but what happened after that? Did you beat those guys up? Eugene quickly denied it and said no. We ended things peacefully. Suddenly his eyes gleamed mischievously as he asked, but it's strange that you don't know that. Weren't you watching from the rooftop? Turns out he knew all along that Soho hadn't gone anywhere but was just hiding and watching. Perhaps because you left halfway, you don't know. The words he just uttered made Soho a little unnerved. He knew that Eugene's voice was still relaxed as he said, anyway, it's great to see you again. I couldn't have imagined you were a mage. Soho probably didn't pay much attention to those words, because his mind was now filled with the thought anyone can tell just by looking at me that I'm an assassin targeting you. And sure enough, he was right. Eugene innocently said it outright, making Soho so shocked he spat out his food. Your footsteps are light, and your movements are very decisive. You seem to be professionally trained, huh? Almost like a ninja. Then in his mind, Soho wondered, is he testing me? So he immediately asked, what's a ninja? Realizing he had a slip of the tongue, Eugene was a bit startled. Oh, that's right. Ninjas were from my previous life. He immediately started playing dumb and talking nonsense. Surprise, actually being a ninja is a fictional profession. So surprising, right? Ninja. What's that? How strange. Seeing that attitude made Soho assume he wasn't thinking too deeply about it. He tried to calm himself in the face of Eugene's cunning naivety. No need to panic. Even if he knows there's no way he'd give me another clue. Then he just made up a reason. Being a merchant is very dangerous because it involves a lot of money. That's why we've been trained in self-defense and stealth for generations. Who knows what Eugene deduced from that as he muttered, oh, thieves, huh? After that, the 2 new friends had a friendly chat. Soho said to his new friend, when it comes to training a Falivia like you is already a champion. Your fighting style isn't like a typical mage's, and Eugene laughed heartily and replied, I guess so. Their conversation reached the ears of those around them who started mocking the 2. What the heck? Why are they showing off like that? Is that considered showing off? Hearing them gossiping, Soho immediately whispered to Eugene, could you lower your voice a little? It seems we're attracting too much attention. Eugene, still with his innocent demeanor, asked why. Everyone else is talking, so what's the big deal? So Soho had to explain. If people like us talk too much, others might think we're trying to show off. Even after hearing that, Eugene was still bewildered. People like us? Like what? Just then, a voice called out to the 2 of them. Candidates Eugene, Falivia, and Levon, please report to Professor Simon's office on the 3rd floor. I repeat, candidates Eugene, Falivia, and Levon. After hearing that, Eugene wondered just the two of us why. A moment later in a room, the person who had summoned the two young men looked at Eugene and called his name. Eugene Falivia. Hearing the professor call him, he quickly replied yes. Then the professor turned to call Soho Levon. He calmly replied yes. Simon said in a serious voice, all right. Show me your ice magic, just as Eugene was about to raise his hand to ask something. Sir. Just then Soho had already completed his test. Here it is. Instantly Simon passed him. Levon, you passed this, made Eugene exclaim in shock. What the? He asked in bewilderment. Sir, what's going on? Simon replied calmly, what else am I supposed to do with the candidates? This is obviously a test. He then warned Eugene, which made the boy a bit nervous. If you don't participate, you will be disqualified, and call me professor, not sir. So he had to demonstrate his skill. Of course I'll take the test, and his power startled Soho. Intricate blocks of ice were created in the blink of an eye. His stammering voice echoed, unbelievable. He himself had to acknowledge the boy's talent, to be fair with such overwhelming talent. If it weren't for the fact that he only had 1 second, just as Eugene was about to add more about his power. For now, this is all I can do, but in an environment with a lot of water. I can repeat the spell to create something bigger, and my other specialty is... Then Simon interrupted and informed Eugene Falivia through him to close the book and declared the exam over. Can I go now? This made Eugene rush to shout, wait, I haven't shown my full potential yet. That attitude annoyed Simon, who said, you've already passed. What do you mean? What else do you want here? Immediately, Eugene told Eastston that the exam results would determine our class, but if it was like this, there would be no difference. Simon exclaimed, oh, so that's how it is? That's why you exceeded your limits without understanding your position. It must be due to Eastston's influence. He calmly said that it was predictable what Eastston had stuffed into your head. That the number of strings doesn't matter. His words made Eugene gasp, thinking, what? And he poured a bucket of cold water over you, but that's not the reality. He bluntly declared that a wizard with only 1 or 2 strings has been determined to be in the lowest class. Moreover, Simon believed that the difference, why do you need something like that? With only 1 or 2 strings, you won't be able to keep up with the complexity of the intermediate class. His voice was full of disdain. Don't be complacent, it's just because you met the standard that I let you pass. But this school has too many people wanting to eliminate the shortcomings of a single string. Finally, he warned Eugene, if you want to survive in this academy for the long term, then don't act all high and mighty. Just live quietly as if you don't exist and then return to where you came from. Florivia's attitude made Soho realize immediately that he was an old-fashioned wizard. Wizards will always favor talent and look down on warriors, but he was a bit worried about Eugene's self-esteem. However, even the famous Falivia was at risk of being expelled. This must be the first time he faced such an insult. Is it okay? Suddenly, Eugene ran outside, startling him, calling after Eugene. Simon remained calm, advising Soho, I would be very grateful if you went alone. Just then, they suddenly heard a scream. Familiar, hello, everyone. It turned out Eugene casually stood in front of the hallway, loudly greeting everyone. Nice to meet you all, I'm the new student, Eugene Falivia. His actions made everyone buzz. What's wrong with him? Why is he acting like that? Is he showing off about his condition? Without any embarrassment, Eugene bluntly declared, I may only have 1 string, but I came to this academy because I want to become a wizard like the god Failen. His impulsive action truly intrigued everyone. Wow, impressive, he has spirit. Just then, someone else walked in. What noise is this? Anika quickly spotted a familiar face. Oh, just as Eugene was about to showcase his skills and abilities. Then Simon suddenly jumped out from somewhere with the intention to stop him. Wait, what are you doing? Of course it was too late because he had already made his move. The sword technique was such that a surge of power along with a brilliant spark appeared, leaving everyone in awe. Anika was so surprised that she froze, then exclaimed. The butler beside her, seeing this, worriedly called out, Sir, assist! Returning to Eugene, his voice slowly rang out. From now on, he glanced at Simon and said, I hope to receive assistance. Simon, both angry and helpless, squeezed out each word. He really doesn't know his place, Falivia. As for Soho, at that moment, he could only utter a single word. Crazy. He could only describe Eugene with one phrase, this madman. Taya proudly and confidently announced it was all thanks to the young master. The young master of the Falivia family left a huge mark at the Magic Academy. Then he suddenly went crazy and cursed out Eugene VI to his face about being disciplined before the opening ceremony. Eugene knew he was wrong, so he looked away guiltily and replied, "Was it that bad?" Unlike his nonchalant attitude, Taya was extremely worried and panicked, saying, setting off a berserk spell in a hall full of people. "Why would you do that? You're lucky you only got a warning for that." Obviously, as usual, he said something punch-worthy, but I've already angered the teacher. But it's not like it was a dangerous spell. Helpless before his master Taya could only think, and you call that an excuse. At least the Count wasn't present. Imagine how shocked he would be if he himself had heard it with his frail health. Next, he turned to ask Soho, the one who has a mudo ziz with Eugene, to please take care of the young master for him. At least it's fortunate the young master has a friend. Please take care of our young master. Soho himself was also getting tired of Eugene, so he intended to refuse. How could I possibly do that? As he spoke, he glanced over at Eugene, who was going wild with magic. A moment later, the two of them left the room. Eugene smiled cheerfully and asked, "The past few days have been chaotic, haven't they?" Soho replied helplessly, "You're the one who caused all that chaos." Even though he was a bit tired of Eugene's antics, he had to admit it was also really refreshing. I was so pissed off at that old witch. At this point, Eugene asked further, "So the next time we meet will be at the opening ceremony next week." Soho quickly confirmed and even told him to come to his house if he needed help, right? "But if you have any questions before, then come find me. Our home is an antique shop just 1 block from here." Since he had offered, Eugene didn't hesitate to say in a low voice, "Actually, I have something to ask that Taya doesn't know about." Seeing him like that, Soho asked, "What is it?" He hurriedly asked, "How do I get to the slums where we saw those kids yesterday? Which way do I go?" seeing that he still wanted to go there. Soho sighed helplessly. "You want to see them again?" A while later, in that dark alley, Eugene cheerfully and sociably performed magic for the kids there, making them look at him with admiring eyes. He continued to perform magic tricks in front of the kids. From a normal liquid, he conjured a flower, making the children laugh endlessly. Just then, he noticed Tamia standing in the distance, so Eugene gently approached and asked, "Hey, kiddo, hello, Tamia, is your arm okay?" Tamia shyly and hesitantly replied, "Yes, it's fine now. It's just an arm." Suddenly, the kid showed off a whole bag of gold coins and said proudly, "It's already healed this much. It doesn't even hurt a lot." Seeing the full bag of gold, a bewildered Eugene asked, "What did you steal again?" Tamia chuckled with amusement and said, "Don't worry, it's just money from a few thugs. I haven't forgotten my promise to live an honest life from now on." The boy's words seemed to make Eugene remember something. The promise. It turned out to be the reminder Soho had given him. Even though you have the right to pity the children, it's better not to give them any false hope. His words left Eugene confused, asking what he didn't answer, but only replied cryptically, "No, don't misunderstand, I didn't mean to make you sad." Back to the present. Tamia and the other kids, full of admiration, called Eugene a hero, a dark hero who punishes corrupt officials and the rich by stealing from them. Being called a hero by the kids made Eugene freeze up a bit, muttering, "A hero." Tamia still maintained her admiring attitude, saying loudly, "You're the best at all those games. As of magic tricks and running away among my friends, so you're just like Felix." Hearing that, Eugene chuckled to himself, wondering if this was Robin Hood from another world. Then he remembered Soho's words, instead of giving them false hope, only for them to fall into despair. Wouldn't it be better to let them learn to live within their means? Because that's what's best for the kids themselves, right? Remembering those things made him a bit sad as he consoled himself. Actually, don't take my words too seriously. Suddenly, Tamia excitedly declared, "I made my decision yesterday after hearing you talk. Big bro to become a hero like Felix." This unfamiliar name made Eugene wonder Felix, seeing his confused look. Tamia hurriedly asked, "You don't know who Felix is?" Another memory surfaced in Eugene's mind. Soho had said in a serious tone, "Actually, I really respect you for caring about the kids." Hearing that, Eugene replied a bit shyly, Well, they're just cute kids, you know." But before he could rejoice any further, Soho dashed his hopes, saying, "But in the end, that's where those kids belong, and you can't protect them forever. Right?" Just then, Joseph's hideous face appeared out of nowhere, and his voice asked, "I hear you've been looking for me." In Eugene's mind, even while he was busy declaring his intention to protect the children from the abyss, he still calmly answered Joseph, "That's right. I have a lot I want to say." He motivated himself, "This is what I have to do." Looking at the children surrounding him, he kept thinking to himself, "I just have to do what I must do." So what if I give them too much hope, even if it causes more pain later? He cherished the children's smiles, thinking as long as we can keep smiling brightly like this. Meanwhile, Soho was in some dusty old bookstore. Looking at the dust in the air, he wearily wondered, so much dust should I clean up? Suddenly, he recalled his words to Eugene, I'm sorry for interfering so much. But I think you should seriously consider what's really best for the children. After hearing that, Eugene smiled and replied, it's okay, I understand. Furthermore, he had also said, thank you, I'm very happy that my first friend in the capital is you. I wasn't thinking that far ahead. Those words made Soho fall into a thoughtful silence. He listened in silence as Eugene said, but even if pretending like nothing is happening is for the best, I still can't do it. Suddenly he revealed something. It may be hard to believe, but I remember my past life. That startled Soho, who asked back, what? Eugene's voice was detached as he recounted his other life. In my previous life, I was an 8-year-old child in another world at a similar age to this life. He said that in that life, he also died from an illness. I had a similar disease and was dying, however, there was a difference between this life and that one. The only difference was that I was born into poverty, lived a life of violence, and was bullied, and even worse than that. Even the only family I had abandoned me. Despite recounting his own tragic story, Eugene's voice remained detached as if it was nothing. Living a life deprived of everything while dying alone from hunger, what do you think that child wished for most? Hearing this, Soho didn't know how to answer. Then Eugene's voice echoed again, live Levant. He remembered the words the ghost within himself had told him, forget about avenging your father or your brothers. Don't think of kneeling before the enemy as a disgrace anymore. You must survive at all costs because you are all that's left of us. The story Eugene told left Soho. At a loss for words, I don't know. I've never thought of something so extreme like that. I knew I was making him uncomfortable, so Eugene chuckled and asked, sorry, did I just make things too heavy? He hesitated and replied, no, it's fine. So what was that? Eugene answered with conviction. Of course it was love. His words left Soho so stunned he froze. Those children. I don't think they're any different from my past self. Back in the present, Soho slowly picked up the old photograph, then suddenly slammed it onto the shelf and told himself, don't hesitate, that's just the nonsense of a patient driven mad by a life spent fighting his illness. He told himself not to pay so much attention to Eugene. Past lives, love. Such nonsensical conversations. If I keep hanging around him, my head will get weird too, yeah. He declared this can't go on. I'm going to kill him today. The killing intent inside Soho flared up. Yeah, that's right. No need to think about it anymore. The demon inside him awakened. If I don't kill him, I'll be the one who dies. The mere thought made him furious. Soho's mind turned to Eugene again, thinking you're acting so noble and strong now, but if you were in a life-or-death situation, do you really think you could hold on to your morals? As he was preoccupied with his dark thoughts, a sudden knock came at the door. This isn't how I want to live. From outside, a voice called out, hello, is anyone there? It was pitch black outside. Taya said shyly, I'm sorry to bother you at this hour, sir. Sir, he asked worriedly, the young master still hasn't returned, so I was wondering if he is here. Hearing this, Soho asked he still hasn't come back. He wondered to himself, did he get taken down in the slums? Then he said he hasn't come here. Those words only made Taya more worried. As for him, he suddenly decided if that's the case, good. It might put my mind at ease. Then he suddenly remembered something. But the slums are under Idia's control. He remembered Joseph's words from that day. Coincidentally, Sir Idia has ordered us to protect you. Eugene. That left him with a lingering question. It seems he received orders to protect Eugene, but why? That day, Eugene had been extremely surprised and shouted what Soho thought it over, really. Isn't that a bit of a contradiction? But knowing him, it wouldn't be surprising at all. At that moment, Taya burst into tears, shouting, it's true! Where could the young master be this time? I should have tied him up or something. Seeing him like that, Soho's heart softened and he reassured him, calm down. He's strong, so nothing will happen to him. Just as he was about to say, if I hear anything, I'll... Taya suddenly noticed someone. There's something in front of the house. He was startled to find a person lying in front of his house. He rushed to help the person up and realized it was Tamia who had been with the master yesterday. What happened? Tamia's strained voice called out, Eugene! The boy dazedly uttered the name. Then the shocking news was revealed. He fought to protect us from the adults, and he was captured. Unsurprisingly, Tamia cried out in alarm, Master, while Soho already knew this would happen. Just as he'd predicted, interfering with these orphans had gotten him into trouble. Suddenly, two conflicting thoughts surfaced in his mind. Perfect. Self-destruction is the best-case scenario. This should be good news, but why do I feel so disgusted? Something inside him finally snapped. To Tamia's astonishment, Soho's deep voice rang out. Where was he taken? At this very moment. He radiated a murderous aura as if he wanted to eliminate the entire group that dared to kidnap Eugene. Take me there. At the very least, let me handle this myself.